Welcome to the Salt Lake Worldwide Podcast, your ultimate destination for everything hunting, conservation, and gear. Today, we're heading down under for a fascinating conversation with Chris Waters, the creator and host of The Huntsman. Chris's show highlights ethical hunting, outdoor living, and wild game cooking, giving viewers a comprehensive look at Australia's unique hunting landscape. Beyond his work on the show, Chris is the founder of Hunting Trips Australia and president of the Australian Hunters Club, actively shaping the country's hunting community. For many of our listeners, this will be an introduction to hunting in Australia, a place with incredible diversity from kangaroos to deers, and yes, controversy surrounding conservation, firearms, and the hunting culture. So Chris, welcome to the show, and let's dive in.
Thank you for having me. Can you say down under again, Sean? I just want to hear you say that.
Down under?
Yeah, that's great.
Was it horrible? Did I kill it?
It's
I did,
terrible.
Yeah,
Down under.
Perfect.
Welcome down under.
G'day, mate.
G'day.
G'day, mate.
Yeah, nobody from Australia is going to watch
to
it.
America.
Yeah. That's perfect. My Crocodile Dundee's a little better. My big knife joke. Paul Hogan. Love that guy. So Chris, yeah, welcome to the show. We chatted a little bit off camera and, kind of told the story, and we can go back. Actually was recording this time, Seth, and you'll be happy. So I got some of that in there. We discussed how I kind of ran into you and what led me to say, oh, hey, this guy looks like fun because he does the same shit that we do. It is nice and kind of handle it the same way. But for those of you that aren't familiar with the show, so first start about telling us a little bit about your journey into hunting. How did you, so you originally grew up on the coast and then you made a move inland and it kind of sparked your interest in the outdoors. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I grew up spearfishing, and that was a big part of what I did with my spare time in my early 20s. It was a connection to the land. It was connection to food. It was just fun. That's where the girls were. They're out on the beach. We're out spearfishing. It's that Australian surfy culture.
Nude
Everyone's
beaches?
in the water. Pardon?
Nude beaches?
They're some of the best beaches to spearfishing. The white whale. No, so
Are we talking about the same spear?
They're protected species, unique, endangered. I grew up spearfishing, loved that, and then, like you said, we moved inland. I had a young family at the time. I got married in my early 20s, and I had 2 kids by I think it was around for mid to late 20s is when we moved, and we essentially moved inland because we wanted to slow down. We were both working full time. My wife and I, we were running the rat race. We were disconnected from pretty much everything and exhausted. And especially during the winter, I would find that we would both work 9 to 5, these crazy jobs, and then go pick our kids up from daycare and drive home. And by the time we got home, it'd be dark. You'd feed your kids, you'd put them in bed, and that was your life. And that was rinse and repeat. And I was just not satisfied with that. And so we ended up selling our property at the height of the property market at the time and bought some land out about an hour away. And it was just the greatest decision of my life. But one of the frustrations that came with it was that disconnection from the pastime or the hobby or the lifestyle of harvesting meat, of enjoying nature. And it was just not feasible to go into the water. It would take, an hour and a half to drive to a location. And as best as you can use the webcams and the surf reports and all those kind of things, it's hard to know what the swell's doing. It could be zero visibility and you've just wasted a whole day. And you can't afford to do that when you have young kids. It's just not responsible and it sucks. And so I had to find another way to scratch that itch, essentially. And hunting we had a hunter introduced into the family through my sister. And I just thought, well, that seems like it's kind of aligned with what I like with spearfishing. So I'll just give it a go. And I just fell headfirst into it, found a whole bunch of mentors, listened to as many podcasts, watched as many videos, but mainly connected with as many older hunters that I could. I just threw myself at them and said, you just teach me. I'll shut up. I'm the young guy. I'm the greenhorn. I know nothing. Whatever you say goes. And I just learnt and pushed into that space and fell in love with it instantly.
It sounds very familiar. I think a lot of people can relate 100% with what you just said. I think, for the three of us, we were, we all grew up hunting and fishing as part of our life. And I don't know, I don't know that I can't even imagine a life without hunting and fishing in my life.
Mm.
But there's so many people that haven't had that opportunity, right? That they grow up and that's not, their parents didn't hunt or fish, or for whatever reason, they never got involved. So I think, man, there's all these kids out there that are growing up today that have never learned to experience that thrill and that excitement of being in the outdoors and being in the wild, you against the beast kind of thing. And it sucks sometimes, but unfortunately that's the way life is. Not everybody's as fortunate as we are, but you obviously got to a point in your life where you made that decision yourself and you were able to find something to compensate for what you lost.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. That's why podcasts and YouTube and TikTok and all of these social platforms are so important, because we can spread this message. But the challenge is that it feeds into the same issues that's causing the reluctance. And so you have all these people, and I see it, you see it in your comments of, oh, you've inspired me to go out hunting, and I'm going out in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time. And then I think, did they go out? And I feel like commenting back saying, cancel your plans for 3 weeks, go this afternoon. Book the time, because that barrier between consuming content that gets you excited, that gets you motivated, and actually going out there and hunting, or even just bushwalking, or even like hiking or whatever to see some animals, that hurdle is significant for so many people. And the longer that you do this, the more involved you are in this community, the less in touch we are with how difficult that barrier is. So it's fascinating. Like I think that this kind of stuff is the answer, as well as things like communities and clubs and education, all those kind of things. But it's a unique challenge, that's for sure. People suck. People are dumb. They need to wake up.
No, yeah, 100%. Yeah, no
Well,
disagreement here.
unfortunately, on the other side of that is you say, hey, I want to go hunt, I don't know, Florida. And then you have 500 people jump on there. Oh, Florida is horrible. You can never hunt Florida. Or what are you doing hunting this game? Or what are you doing hunting this gun? Or, and you say you're just trying to get out and enjoy the nature. And you got, 500 people telling you how horrible you are for that decision, fellow hunters, fellow gamesmen, fellow, so that's the downside, I think, is the social media problem,
Correct.
So yeah, I think if you can fight that battle too, that's even better to actually just push that person beyond that, reservation, and have them just fully commit and not listen to the armchair warriors and go. So
yeah, that's why we need strong personalities in the hunting space. People of influence who can pull people up by their bootstraps and say, "What are you doing? Like, are you serious? Stop being an idiot." This, like, for instance, we have similar things in Facebook groups. You'll find a new hunter who comes in and says, I'm looking to, for instance, I'm so excited to finally start my hunting journey and shoot a kangaroo. And then everyone jumps on this person and shreds them. You can't shoot kangaroos. You require permits, and you can't use a bow. And it's like, hey, calm down. This guy's excited. How about we encourage them and leverage their excitement and take the opportunity to teach them, rather than jumping down their throat. Where is the advantage in doing that? That's one of the big missions that I have, and we can talk about it later. But my life's goal is to improve hunting culture within Australia, is to kind of bolster the community, encourage positive values, because I honestly believe that if we want it to continue in Australia, and it is at risk of being taken away from us slowly, inch by inch, we have to show our government that we have an interest in this place and that we can build an economy around it. And the only way that we can do that is by encouraging positive communities. If we are all fighting over access, or fighting over trivial things like which gun you're using, or just stupid stuff, we will end up destroying the thing that we love, and the thing that we think that we're defending. It's interesting.
100%. And unfortunately, we're the hunting community itself can be and could very well be responsible for its own demise, in that there's so much infighting within the community, hunters bashing other hunters, and on and on and on. And crossbow hunters hate compound bow hunters, hate traditional, all that. And I, especially younger in my career, I was guilty of it, right? I hated the idea of crossbow hunters when we were out with compound bows, and I hated the idea of high fence hunting, and I hated all these other ideas. And then several years ago, something sparked. I'm like, wait a minute, these people are hunting. They're participating in the sport. So why would I bash somebody for doing something that goes back into conservation? They're generating dollars. They're encouraging the next generation to go out and hunt and to do the same kind of thing. And yeah, it was like a light switch. I'm like, this was stupid. So for all these years, I was thinking just so one sided and never about the long term ramifications of anything I said or anything, because I was guilty. Like I would bash people about it. Oh, you're a pussy. You only
Well,
hunt
that's
with a
how I was
crossbow.
introduced to hunting, was a crossbow. I mean, that's what I shot my
Yeah,
first whitetail was a crossbow. So, I mean, you do what you do, but you
Mm.
use what weapon you can.
but
I
you
mean, I
but you're
think it.
absolutely
Unfortunately, it goes deeper than just the issues with the hunting community. I believe that there's philosophies and values that underpin this that is contributing to that space. Apart from the fact that there is the stereotype of, the disgruntled, old, frustrated, grumpy hunter who's having these conversations. But I think ultimately it's the breakdown of community and the breakdown of the family unit and the rise
It's a
of
tradition.
individualism. That kind of led to this in that,
Yeah.
and it's a broader philosophical conversation and we can get into the weeds if you want. but essentially I think it's that everyone's telling you that you're a princess and that you can get whatever you want and chase your dreams.
everybody gets a trophy.
Everyone gets a trophy, and then we are bewildered why everyone is so opinionated and why everyone's barking at everyone. It's because there's no sense of shared value amongst a community. We don't feel like we're moving together as a community. And until we start to reclaim those values, we probably won't be addressing the broader issues in hunting. Wow, that sounded like a political statement. I know you guys have just had your election. You don't need any of that.
The statement you made before that was going to be the first short I was going to cut. What you just said there is going to be the second short I'm going to cut. So carry on, sir. You're 2 for 2 right now, buddy.
I am not known in Australia as a political commentator or a philosophical commentator. So maybe that's my place in America. Maybe that's my shtick.
Well, listen, but here's the thing. You're right. So I think back to like my grandfather's generation, right? He was alive for several years, but of my young childhood, and I can still remember him taking us hunting and fishing as kids, into 12, 13ish years old before he passed. And everybody in that generation, they hunted, they fished, all their sons did, or their daughters did. I mean, it was just ingrained. So I don't. I grew up in a super conservative family. It was family first. Everything we did was together. Deer hunting was a family tradition. We were all going to do it no matter what. And it just, there was no question. Hey, are you going to come and hunt deer season? That you didn't have to call because you knew they were going to show up and they're going to be at your house, and then you're going to go to the cabin and you're going to participate, and then you're going to duck hunt, and then we're going to trout fish, and then we're going to on and on and on. Now you're right. There's so much disconnect, and it's crazy to think that there's people out there that are so worried about pronouns, and yet to me, being a conservative, I don't understand where the hell the disconnect is. Are you a he? Are you a she? Are you a fucking cat? Or what? Come on. If we're having those conversations, those people are never gonna. How the hell do you teach them hunting about the outdoors?
Well, you got to think back then, Sean. You didn't have cell phones. You didn't have computers and social media and shit. I mean, that's the way of the world. I mean, back then, that's all you knew. You saw your family and everybody hunt, so that's what
a really
you did,
good point.
right?
It was the community, it was the tribe, it was the family, right? That was your world.
It's tradition. Yeah, I mean,
and
now
the expression of your own personality was in the context of your community. It's like I talk to my boys all the time about the heritage of our surname being Waters. I'm like, you're a Waters boy. This is what being a Waters boy means, and I will hold you to account for that. Because when you go out there, you're representing me, you're representing my brother, you're representing my father, my grandfather. And if you soil our name, there's consequences for that. But that's something that I've had to instill. It's like, it's not just you. It's not just Eli Waters or Parker Waters. I'm like, you're a Waters. And unfortunately, even the expression of our own personalities has been lost, kind of that communal element of it. And it's just like you in a silo and your wants and your needs and your path and your journey. And unfortunately, that's a really shallow way to look at a person and a person's journey through life. It's really sad.
Yeah, I totally get where and I'm glad you said what you did too, because I've raised my kid the same way. I've got a son that's 24 now, and he was held to a higher standard than a lot of his friends. And as he grew up and we became closer, especially after he graduated high school and moved on, he actually still works here with me. He's able to have those kind of open conversations that he didn't when he was younger. And he's like, Dad, there's a lot of things I didn't get to do because, it wasn't right. And, you told me I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that. And I never, like, I hated you for it. But now I've got, so now he's got his own kid. I've got a 3-year-old granddaughter. Now he understands and he gets it. He's like, shit, now I know why you pushed so hard and tried to teach me to do these things the right way and held me accountable when I made a mistake. Cause now I've got a kid that I'm responsible for myself and I don't want her doing any of that stupid shit I tried to do. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly why. And that's our job as parents is to nurture you to a certain extent, but there's also hard lessons to be learned in life. And sometimes you got to put your foot in a kid's ass if you need to. I mean, you have to.
Tough love, baby. Tough love.
Let's talk about hunting.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That went
Your listeners, if you've got to the point in this podcast and you're still here, congratulations. You're a moral person. You should enjoy the rest of the hunting conversation.
He's really not.
Good.
Well, actually, that number.
Listen,
Yeah.
I have a fully functional moral compass, by the way, that points to the straight and narrow always. It's my mouth though that gets away from me.
Yeah.
That I feel strongly about shit, but yeah. So you're right. Let's get back to the hunting part of it. So so we talked a little bit about how you got started, but for the audience, tell us, what is the Huntsman and what sets it apart from other hunting shows?
Yeah, sure. The Huntsman is an Australian hunting brand, more broadly, but it represents a TV show that airs in Australia on Foxtel, as well as it's a YouTube channel and obviously the social platforms as well. It's a show that I started. Well, the YouTube channel's been around for maybe 3 years now, but the show itself, as a concept, really started 2 years ago. We had a first season 2 years ago that was really a test, a proof of concept to see if it's something that we could do physically, technically. Really, it was an experiment to see how far my wife would let me go, traveling around the country and getting up to all sorts of mischief. And then we've literally just finished our second season, where we upped the production value, got it on TV, got more serious about planning and preparing and really trying to craft hunting narratives. And literally the season finale, episode 10, which is a water buffalo hunt, went live last night, which is pretty exciting. So that's all wrapped up. But in terms of what makes it different or interesting or unique, it's a constant battle that I fight, in that what I want people to feel is this authentic experience. I want them to feel like you're next to me, or you're the one holding the rifle or the bow or whatever it is. But I also want there to be a clear story, and not a fabricated story. I want to tell the story of what happened, and I want it to look great and feel great. And all those things together is a real challenge, because you can go one way where it's super polished and everything is smooth and buttery and looks great, but that's not what actually happened. Or you can go the opposite direction, where it's a GoPro rattling around and there's long, scenes of like 20 minutes of walking that's just boring.
B-roll. Just nothing but B-roll.
Exactly. So what I've tried to do is produce a show that sits in the middle, that's authentic, that's real, that's honest, that's there to educate, it's there to inform and entertain. We talked. I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point. But the clip that you watched that introduced me to you was a little bit cheeky, and I'm not afraid to be cheeky, even though I know it's at the expense of some audience who are very, very serious. I'm a very serious person. I'm a very deep thinker. I have very deep, strong values and an ethical framework. But I'm also a person. I'm a human being. We laugh, we cry. I want all of that included. And I'm not ashamed to be myself in that content. And if that means doing something obscene or stupid or whatever, I'm not afraid to do that. It's about finding that balance between authenticity and quality, but ultimately telling a story that's interesting, engaging, entertaining. That's a really broad way of describing it.
No, but
it's just good. If you're an American, go watch it.
Listen, no, you hit the nail on the head. So there's the, especially with, we're in kind of a unique niche in that we're not, our content isn't based solely on hunting a whitetail or hunting an elk or a mule deer kind of thing. And that's what, US pop culture is from a hunting perspective. That's those niches right there. We go overseas, we do weird shit, and, we chase weird animals. And a couple of years ago, I realized, even though we were doing that kind of weird thing, I was still editing the same way I used to, kind of the run and gun style, and not telling a story. There was no clear narrative. Um, and for whatever reason, and I don't remember, maybe it was a meat eater episode or something that kind of sparked something like, hey, you know what, this needs to be about something. And if we can tell a story, right, whether it revolve around conservation or the species or the journey it took to get here as individuals to just be able to get here and do this, it 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 makes it so much better. Now, granted, it's much harder to edit like that, and you have to think, much further in advance, and somewhat script these things out, especially in your head and ideas. And I'm constantly writing down ideas and going back and forth. But it's such a pleasure for me to see some of the later stuff that we did, compared to the first stuff. And you, when I watch your shows, there's you kind of always start with a clear narrative and a hook. There's always a hook at the onset of your videos, but there's a clear, like, driving force. Like, your episodes, like, I feel like I know where they're going, and I'm watching to see how you get there. And you tease just enough of it to keep the viewer engaged. And I love it. And I love the editing, and especially the more recent videos too. The B-roll is fantastic. It's used in the right places. It's used for pace. The narration is like, you do a really good job. Do you edit your own videos, or do you have an editor? Your editing is fantastic. You've done, like I said, with the integration of the B-roll and the A-roll and the narration and the pace too, and that's important. And also using the right music. That's hard to get. Like, people don't understand that. That's
People have
tough,
no
right?
idea how long that takes. I can
Yeah.
spend 2 days scoring a piece.
Yeah.
It's about, and there's the tools that are available now to help you with that process, like Artlist, are so much better than what they used to, in that you can search based on mood and genre and all different types of things. But realistically, if you've got like you said, if there's a section that you want to feel a certain way or communicate a certain idea or concept, the music is king in terms of helping elevate the content and pulling on those heartstrings, or making it feel tense. And you can just slap a song in there if you want to. But if you're truly trying to tell a story, if you truly want to engage, then you need to sit there for days listening to thousands of tracks until you find the right one. And that's difficult. I should say as well, so in terms of editing, for this season, we shared the load. So we had an initial editor do a bunch of work in some of the episodes, and then I'd finish them. And then some episodes, it'd be collaborative. And then for a bunch of episodes, it was just me editing them as well. So we've kind of shared it around a little bit. But for me, that's been some of the joy, is to do the hunt, have the experience. And as you mentioned, it's about pre-planning, and we don't script anything formally. Instead, we don't sit down and write out a script. But as the hunt is happening, I feel like me and my small team, we're editing it in our brains. We're thinking, okay, this is happening, that happened. What's the, what do we need? How much do we need to say to the camera? Again, you can go back and you can just film your hunt, and then later think, okay, I'll just put a voice over the entire thing to help guide the viewer in the direction that I want. But that breaks that sense of immersion. That breaks that connection. That's not authentic. It's not interesting. It's boring. And if it's just like some deeply cinematic voice, it's just like, I don't care. Like, what? It doesn't happen when you're hunting. No one's speaking into your brain. But then to have the presence of mind when you're in a hunt to talk to the camera and help move the story in a direction or share the experience. That's not something that everyone can do naturally. And B, it's difficult. It's a lot to keep in your brain. But for me, that's what's fun about it, is because I'm not just hunting. I'm creating something to share that has a narrative. And if I can do that and have an enjoyable hunt and capture it, then I can enjoy it for years to come. And that's exciting. It's a fun challenge.
I think you do a really good job, especially with the editing piece. And I do all of we actually have an editor now that's coming on board. But what I found from the editing side, it's so hard to edit something that you weren't a part of the hunt of. So if you're just looking at random footage that somebody else shot and you weren't actually there, it's so hard to craft that narrative and tell that story, right? Because when I'm in the moment, I know not only what I'm feeling, but what the hunter's feeling, right? Whoever's on the gun, and it's so hard to replicate that feeling if you've not been there. You can ask people, hey, what was it like? But it just, they for whatever reason, they can't enunciate it properly enough to give me the feel that I'm looking for. So I think, and Staffen brought this up in the last podcast, I think now I'm at a point, I actually prefer being on the camera rather than being on the gun now. I really enjoy that part of it. Yeah. And I don't have to be in front of the camera to have a good time. I get more excited and nervous when I'm on the camera and, it's about to go down, right? And I know I've been the other side, right? And there's that heart pounding and you get the adrenaline pumping. It's 10 times worse when I'm on that camera because I'm trying not to muck it up and make sure everything's perfect and the shot is framed right and everything's perfect. And then there's
I'm so much more nervous for the cameraman next to me who's got the zoom camera on the animal. And I'm like, you've got a harder job than me who's shooting. I don't care if I'm shooting through a gap that big at 400 meters. I'm like, I'll take that job. You could have that one. That one sucks.
How many shots got fucked up because you couldn't get it on camera?
Oh my gosh. This is something that people don't realize. And my hat goes off to anyone who solo films. Especially in the kind of hunting that I do, where you're shooting an animal sub 100 meters, to find the animal, especially a deer that's so incredibly skittish and aware and just amazing, to find it, set up a camera, get it in focus, line up and take an ethical shot is borderline impossible. Anyone who does it is a genius, has incredible skill. So if you see someone doing that, just know that is an incredibly difficult feat. Even with a group, a small production team, even if you've got one cameraman with you, again, in the style that we do, up in the mountains, up in the alpine, difficult terrain, finding an animal, getting it on camera, the camera, you've got to confirm the cameraman's got it in frame, that he knows the one if there's multiple animals, it's this one, it's not that one. And then you're in position. Oh no, now it's moved. Now we have to move. And he picks up the tripod, he moves it, you move with him, sticks a snap. And oh my goodness, it's just, people watch it and they go, oh yeah, cool. That was interesting. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, you have no idea.
Staffen and Paul, did any of that sound familiar to you guys at all?
Yeah, every hunt pretty much.
I watch the gritty films and I see the footage that they get, and my mind is just blown to the quality that they can pull out, and the shots of animals is just, it's just next level. If I could be a fraction of their skill level, I'd die a happy man. It's just incredible.
Yeah. No, we definitely get that. I think Staffen tells a story about Staffen, I think, was ready to kick my ass and throw me in the back of a bakkie 2 years ago now, right? In South Africa. Yeah. You tell a story. It's your daughter. Tell the story.
Yeah, I took my daughter to Africa for graduation, and we were chasing zebras. I think it was like at least for 3 or 4 days. And everyone that we would see, they were just running 900 mile an hour. And I think we had a total of 4 or 5 people in the group, trying to get on these zebra. And I looked at Sean, I was like, dude, I said, here's the deal. I said, if it comes between that fucking camera and my daughter shooting a zebra, the camera's going back to the cabin.
Yeah.
Because it was like, wait, you can't shoot. You can't shoot. I can't see it. I can't see it. Or I can see it and we can't shoot. And it was just like, oh, we had so many hunts blown up because of that. And it was like, so frustrating.
Yeah. I was literally talking. So we've got our 3rd season planned for next year. That's going to be very, very different to what we've done historically. And we've got some interns that are coming in to help with production. And I was explaining to them, they're film students. I was explaining to them the unique challenge of literally what we're discussing right now. And I said, it will get to a point where if you haven't seen the animal and you framed it up, I'm going to shoot. Because a dead deer on the ground is that we can film, because it's not going anywhere, is better than a deer not on camera at all. or a deer
wasting everybody's time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Especially when it can take days to line up a shot.
Yeah.
And and you guys know this, and people at home, I imagine, figure this out. But when you're investing time, effort, money, energy, willpower, when your family is sacrificing for you to be out there, and you don't come back with something that's of value, that is difficult to justify.
Right.
And it's for the people that go out there and they're just capturing the hunts that they are otherwise anyway going to experience and enjoy. Fine, that's fine. Like, but those people who are actually trying to produce something, the pressure is on it. It's a lot of pressure, and there's just nothing else like it. There's nothing else like filming a hunt to make a show. It's an incredibly difficult challenge, and it's exhilarating. And I tell you what, if you want to become a better hunter, if you want to if you know, going from rifle to compound to recurve isn't enough, become a recurve hunter with a hunting show. I guarantee you'll become a better hunter. It will suck, but you will become a better hunter.
Yeah, try chasing shit through the jungle with 7 people behind you.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's hard.
One person, holy moly.
Yeah, they it is difficult, and I don't think a lot of people understand what goes into it, especially to create something that's of a high production value, right? That's a thing. You know, anybody can do it with a GoPro. It's about, you know, telling a story and getting everything. And, you know, here's the thing. I've got 6 years worth of B-roll that I'm never going to use compared to this little bit of A-roll that I can use, right? Because you've got all this B-roll and you're feeling, and 90%, especially for us, of a spot and stalk, it just doesn't work out. You know, it's just the nature of the beast. You can't get into position, or it could be the wrong animal too. It's not the trophy caliber animal. It's not the mature animal. You know, we're not specifically trophy hunters in the sense that we're looking for the biggest animal. For us, it's about the most mature animal in the herd, taking that animal out of the herd. So it doesn't have to be a 300-inch elk. You know, it
Well,
could
for
just
me,
be
I just like to shoot shit, so it doesn't matter to me.
So this is where we might differ, in that primarily I'm a harvester. So I go out there and I harvest food, meat. It's all that I want. If there's a group and there's a stag or a buck there, of course I'm going to take the stag or the buck. If there's a group there where there's a spiker, you know, a juvenile deer and a big mature wide frame buck, of course I'm going to take that, because that's more of a challenge, that's more fun. And I mean, I don't mind the meat of a buck. I don't even care if the buck's rutting. Maybe I might then choose to shoot a doe or a hind. But we don't have this, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later. Maybe we can talk about it now if you want. We don't have the same conservation concerns that you do in America. When we talk about, America is how you guys say it, not America. America. We don't have the same. When we talk about conservation here, we're talking about the ecology, the biome. We're talking about nature, our landscapes. We're not talking about animals. There is a pressure in Australia to reduce the number of deers, in some states to eradicate deer completely, to remove them, to wipe them off the face of the state. So there are no bag limits on 5 of the 6 species that we have. There are no seasons for 5 of the 6 species that we have. You can go out, and this might sound like this is why I said promised land at the start of the video. Maybe people won't hear that because it got cut out. But really, you can, and for an American, you can come to Australia and you can shoot 1,000 deer, and that's totally fine. You can go whenever you want, wherever you want. Well, not wherever.
I'm right there with you. I'm also likewise in.
So
which is why my language, sir.
Which is part of the reason why I'm a harvester, is because there's it's not a big no-no to shoot a female deer. In fact, it's encouraged, because we're trying to, some people are trying to reduce them, control them, manage them. So there's a difference.
What's your thoughts on that?
Many and complicated and disliked by my government. I value deer. I value goats, pigs, animals in general. And so when I look at animals in our environment, if they're flourishing, I don't care if they're introduced. I don't actually think that's potentially a useful word. If our environment is balanced and it's doing well, I don't think there's any reason to remove them. I think that our government is and our state governments are incredibly confused about the role of deer, especially. And what is probably difficult to understand, or what might cause some difficulty with Americans understanding Australia, is our hunting culture is so young. It's very juvenile. And so we don't have a really strong hunting economy that surrounds it. And because there's no strong hunting economy, there's no incentive for the government to invest in that, or to make laws that are favorable to hunters. And so we're in this weird place where the government will spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on aerial cullings, on baiting and poisoning, which in South Australia, which is one of the states of Australia, they're looking to completely eradicate deer, and they will shoot deer 5 times per animal with a shotgun from a helicopter, and they call that ethical. And it's just riddled, absolutely riddled, and it's left there to rot and feed the wild dogs and the foxes, and then they complain about those being an issue. But it's just our government doesn't know what to do with them, and doesn't know how to support the Australian hunting lifestyle to help manage them, because I do think they need to be managed. I'm not anti-deer management, but I am anti-shooting animals to leave them to rot on the ground. And wasting taxpayers' dollars to do it, when there are so many hunters coming into the scene that would love to be given a GPS pin and say, hey, go hunt here. We have too many deer here. Go hunt here. Go reduce them. Go harvest them. Go feed your families. But our government isn't interested in doing that. They're interested in being a bunch of gooses.
Are they making money off of it, or are they just...
No.
Well, that's why they don't care, because they're not making money off of it.
And which is what's crazy. So this is what's interesting about the way that game... So deer in Australia are classified under a number of different categories. So in some states, they're considered a pest and should be completely removed. In some states, they're considered a pest and have an additional category on top of that called they're a game animal, which basically means that you pay for the right to shoot them, which is the case in Victoria and New South Wales. But what you pay, you'll think this is criminal, so it's 60 Australian dollars a year to go into our public land and shoot as many as you want. So what's that in American dollars?
I don't know what the exchange rate is, but it's
30,
cheap.
30 American dollars to go out and shoot as many deer as you want, whenever you want. That's all it costs.
Wow.
In New South Wales, it's a little bit different in that they have, so that the major places that we have public land hunting is in mainly along the east coast in New South Wales and in Victoria, and then in Tasmania, which is the tiny little island that we ignore below us. They have public land hunting. Everywhere else in the state is private, essentially. But in those states, that's what you pay to essentially go out into public land. And New South Wales has like a booking system where you book to go into a state forest, and there's an allocation of the number of people that can be in those state forests, but it's nowhere near abused or field like it would be in America. And in Victoria, there's zero restrictions at all. I mean, I mentioned that we have 5 species of deer, one of them being hog deer. That's the smallest deer. That has a season where you can go in and you can take a male and a female hog deer during the month of whenever they set the season, which is generally April, which is terrible because that's when our duck season is in Victoria, and that's when the rut happens for fallow deer and the roar happens with the red deer. So it's a terrible time to like say, hey, you can go hunt this small obscure species of deer right when all the big stuff is croaking and going crazy. But that's the case. So, and you can get one of each, and that's the only time to do it is in that period. But again, that's an example of how our government is confused in that we'll treat all these other deer species like a pest and we want to remove them. But this one particular species, it's not doing so good. So let's try and help it out. And it's like, well, why can't we take that approach for all of the species of deer? Why can't we? And there's a ballot. There's a ballot where we have a few different islands where there's high populations of these hog deer, and you pay to enter the ballot. But again, it's a nominal fee. It's like 10 American dollars to enter the ballot, and you've got maybe a 1 in 300 chance of winning. So everyone does it. It's bizarre. Our country doesn't value deer or value hunting, and some people, because we have so many deer, some people think that, and especially the old guard of hunters, are like, that's great. It's like a promised land. Don't tell anyone. Let's not try and change things. We don't want more regulations. We don't want, the government's fingers, affecting it. But for me, I look at it like a glass house. I just think this is like a loose stone is going to get thrown and the whole thing is going to come down. And then we're going to lose it all if we don't have some measure of sanity and management. or we'll just completely destroy all the deer between hunters and aerial culling.
That's strange to us. What you said there. I understand the need to cull certain species. Even in the States, when we deal with overpopulation, that we need to cull, but we don't cull and let them sit there. The state opens up more doe tags, for example, or they'll give you $2 tags
it
or
goes
something
somewhere.
like that.
Hunters for the hungry, it goes somewhere.
The idea of killing an animal and letting it rot, it just pisses me off to no end. I couldn't imagine that. And primarily, we said we all grew up hunting, right? But the trophy hunting thing that everybody thinks about the U.S. and we're always out there for. None of us grew up that way. It was to put food on the table. We were stocking the freezers because we didn't, at least me, I didn't grow up in a rich household by any stretch of imagination. We were poor, so the majority of the meat that we ate, the red meat, came from white-tailed deer that we would harvest during deer season, and hopefully that would make it throughout the entire year. So to see an animal go to waste like that, I mean, that's a huge no-no here. And there are some people that have done it before. Obviously, but it's not looked at the same way in the States. If you do that, you're going to be shunned for the rest of your life, and you're just not going to be able to do that. And even in places like South Africa, where they've got to cull massive amounts of animals, they go down and pick the animals up and they process the animals, and there's a secondary market for it. So the idea of just shooting something. Now, with that said, somebody in the comments is going to reach out and they're going to say, hey, what about the feral hog population in the States? And okay, then I'm going to say, yes, with the exception of feral hogs, that is correct, because there's so many of those bastards that you can't keep up with them with as fast as they breed. They're everywhere. So yes, we do helicopter hog hunts, and a lot of times they'll let them lay if the farmer wants them to, but with the exception of that, that's not an American idea at all. When you see these elk hunters going and they're backpacking in and doing these solo hunts and they're packing out, I mean, they may have to make 3 or 4, round trips in it, 20, 30K a hike to get in and back with their meat out, to get those quarters out. And that's just what we do. I mean, but trophy hunting is a big thing here though, at the same time. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not a trophy hunter, because I'm going to pass a smaller deer to wait on a bigger one. But for us, our mentality is,
if you're trophy hunting, if you're meat hunting, you're not.
That's different,
right?
Yeah, if I got to fill the freezer, then I'm going to go. I'm going to
Browns down, baby, Browns down.
A little spike or whatever. I don't care if it's going in the freezer. I don't give a shit. And it depends on the population. But for us, the idea for us is to advance the age class, right? So in order to grow big deer, you can't shoot every 2-year-old, right? You've got to advance them to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 years old. So, but it's very hard for people to do. You sit in a stand and that 5-year-old never comes out. Well, that 3-year-old after about 3 sits starts looking mighty good over there. And, so you get a lot of that, and that's fine. We're definitely not going to bash anybody. If you want to shoot a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, shoot the 2-year-old or 3-year-old. I personally don't give a shit. On our farms that we own and maintain, we try to hold ourselves to a different standard, but don't get me wrong. If the freezers are empty, we're going to go out there and get some meat for that damn freezer. I'll guarantee you that. Taco meat, as Paul's kids call it.
Don't tell me to go stock up either, because I'll do it.
I should be clear as well that the perception of the Australian hunter is very different, in that we have a similar value around harvesting meat, taking as much as you can. It's only the government that seems to be misguided in the idea that you can just leave them to rot, which is strange, because in other situations they're very kind of animal rights focused, and it's just bizarre that we can have this duality of, well, let's put all this work into protecting certain species, and other species, let them rot, which is bizarre. But we have similar culture in Australia, in that for those hunters that have been hunting for a while, that would consider themselves like a serious hunter, or that it's a core part of their lifestyle, you pass on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th year, 5th year stag or buck. You want to get the 10-year-old, the 11-year-old, like the sambar who's got tines like that thick, that's what you want. You want that good genetics. If you care about the deer, you want them to continue. And my absolute favorite thing about hunting is when I'm hunting a specific animal and I know him and I've seen him and I've passed on him for years, and I'm now ready to shoot him. and I've seen him on the trail camera. He's got a name. I know all of his features. I know all of his points. I know exactly who he is, and he knows me. And I'm going to get him. And that dance, that is so much more rewarding, and that's so much more fun. But that's not something that everyone can do. It takes a lot of time and effort. You're going to be out in the bush a lot to have that relationship with an animal. But ultimately, that's the most fruitful. And that, for me, that goes beyond even the idea of a trophy. I don't care what his head looks like. It's the connection is the relationship. It's the time. It's the history that you've had that makes
Got
that
history
deer
and who's the smarter one coming out, right?
Oh yeah. And all deer are smart deer. Like until they get to the point where they're just like, oh, my teeth are just rotted out. Shoot me, please.
Fuck,
Like,
take me.
it's going to be you or it's going to be the dingoes. So best you take me.
That's funny.
Right. Well, you made a comment earlier when you were talking about them culling the animals in the helicopter and riddled full of shotgun bullets, and they're still it's not ethical. So that's one of the things I wanted to bring up. So your show very much emphasizes ethical hunting and outdoor living. So why are those themes so central to your message?
Sure. So we're intentional about communicating and demonstrating ethical hunting because our community is so young. I feel a really strong responsibility. We don't have many voices in Australia or many hunting personalities that are actively leading the culture. We have some very large clubs that are older clubs that are set in their ways, that are bureaucratic, that have lost touch with what they were initially formed to do, and they've just become powerful and lazy. Not all of them. There's some really great clubs out there, but there's very few organizations or individuals or brands that are actively trying to influence the community and grow the hunting culture in a positive direction. And so I feel a burden of responsibility to do that. And I don't want that to sound self-righteous or pompous or anything. And I don't care if people think that. I just feel that that's a responsibility that I should take on. And as the brand grows and its influence grows, I want that message then to be disseminated. And especially for new hunters. I mean, there's an old guard of hunters in Australia who are feeling more and more out of touch with what's happening in our community because of the emphasis on ethics, because of the emphasis on harvesting, that get frustrated with me because of how I feel about those things. And I honestly don't care about their opinions. I don't care. I mean, I listen to them and I hear them out, but ultimately, I want to see people who are pushing positive agendas. And if you're not pushing a positive agenda, get lost. Like, I don't care. Like, go do your thing, but like, it doesn't concern me. So that's why we put a lot of effort in, because there's all these new hunters that are watching and listening, and a large portion of the audience of the show in Australia, at least, are new hunters who are getting into it for the first time, and what they see is what they're going to do and what they're going to mimic. And I don't just want them to see those values outworked and displayed. I also then want to connect them with individuals or groups or organizations or outfitters who can then continue that journey towards positive ethical hunting. I want to connect them. I don't want, I lay in bed at night, like fearful that people would just watch the show and call themselves a hunter and that's their hunting experience. It's just this kind of like, yeah, that's fun. I want to do that one day. Or to become a hunter and be completely isolated and disconnected from the community. That's not potentially that useful as well. So that's part of the reason why we have such a strict focus on ethical hunting. And even people might be listening to that and be like, well, that sounds like a boring show. And it potentially could be if that's all that you did, but that's when the whole authenticity comes into play. And if you can clearly articulate these values and demonstrate them in an authentic way, that is very interesting. If it's just a quick little, snippet fact check on the bottom, did you know that in Australia, blah, 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 well, that's worth nothing. But if someone is living and breathing it and demonstrating it, showing it, and helping then influence and mentor others to do the same thing, well, that's powerful. That's what's going to see our community change and grow and ultimately expand.
Well, and you kind of mentioned the social media aspect of it, right? And that's an important thing now too. There's so many people that are connected via social media all over the world. I mean, we found you because of social media, and people find us because of social media. And it's such a huge tool, and it can be used for so much good, but it can also be used for bad just that quick too. And I don't know if it's a thing in Australia, but we've got these, and yes, this conversation is coming up, guys. You know where I'm going with this. We've got social media influencers, right?
Oh, I'm getting uncomfortable.
Here I go, Paul. And so,
Strap in.
and there are good social media influencers and there are bad. The problem we've had lately, and I'm going to say it's relatively new in that it's the last 5 to 7 years, especially with TikTok blowing up and everything else, that there's all these people now that have decided to be hunting influencers. These people can't even tie their shoe in the morning, but because they can put on a bikini and walk out the door and sling an arrow and film themselves doing it, they're getting sponsored by this bow company and that bow company and this shoe company and this pant company and all this other horse. I'm like, is this really what the industry is coming to now? You've got all these people out here working our ass off. We're spending months in the field. We're trying to tell a story. We're trying to preach conservation and do things the right way. And there's no easy way. There's no free pass ticket. You got to work for it. And there's all these assholes on social media, right, that are getting all these sponsors and everything.
Tell me what you really think, Sean.
Yeah.
See what his mouth does?
I get worked up over this. Well, but I see it though, and listen, and I don't want to paint the entirety of the industry with that brush, right?
Just the Americans. That's fine. Keep going.
Yeah. There are some people that do it the right way. They work off and they absolutely deserve it. And they've been doing it for years, and props to them. But there's this new generation that's using social media through the hunting industry as a means to monetization and to put money in their bank account. They don't give a flying about the sport. They don't give a shit about conservation. All it is at the end of the day is collecting a paycheck. And I ask every guest the same question because it's important to me, and I can see that change in the industry, and I definitely do not like it, and I think it's to our detriment. But how do you see social media? Like I said, for me, it's a double-edged sword, right? It's great because you can get the message out there, but it can also be abused by people like that at the same time.
I'll say a few things because I've thought about this quite a lot throughout my journey. One comment is regarding those individuals that are getting out there and don't have no idea what they're doing. I'm not actually opposed to that. If their heart and their intention is good. It's something that I struggled with my hunting journey, and especially given it's been documented so much, is that I'm always learning. I'm always honing my skills, always getting better. I've said things in the past that weren't correct. I've shown my ignorance, but I've always been committed to learning. And some of the frustrations that people have had in my early days was because I'm a confident person, they assumed, therefore, and I come across confident on camera, they assumed that I thought that I was a professional or that I knew everything, which has never been the case. I've never claimed to be a professional. I still don't claim to be a professional. I don't claim to be a master of any skill or even particularly good at anything, that's a great plug. Go watch The Huntsman. But I wanted to learn. I wanted to grow, and I created content because that's something that I've always enjoyed doing. That's a bent that I've had. So when I see, especially younger people creating content, hunting content, and even if it's a little bit misguided, even if it's kind of a bit clickbaity or is just a bit off, it's not as authentic as it could be or should be, or the topics around what they're producing footage for or filming are somewhat more kind of commercially driven. I have a little bit of grace for them because I know what it can be like trying to get into that space. And I feel as long as that person has an authentic heart and is trying to grow, I'm happy for them to grow. But then you also need to trust that the audience understands that the audience is going, oh, wow, he's bought this brand new thing from Amazon and it makes him the best hunter in the world. I should go buy that thing. Like, people need to, there's a certain responsibility that needs to offset that of, if you are representing brands or a lifestyle, that you should do so with integrity. And so that's important as well. But those individuals that are literally playing to the algorithm, and especially on platforms like TikTok, which drives me insane, and this is showing my age. I hate TikTok with a passion for so many reasons, not just its censorship, but just the virality of trash on there frustrates me no end. And given that this is my full-time job, this is a business that I run, we would be irresponsible if we didn't use a platform that potentially allowed our content to go viral. So we use TikTok, but we use it poorly, in the sense that we're not optimizing. Like, I'm not just going out there and filming a video that's like 100, kills of a buck headshot. Like, that's not a video that you'll ever see me make. I'm not interested in that at all. Similarly, you won't see me in a bikini flinging an arrow. I'm not interested in doing that either. I'm not sure people would want to see that. Maybe my wife. I don't know. I'll have to ask her tonight.
I don't know. People around here nowadays, they might want to see that.
Exactly.
We'll do California, not where I live. That's in
You
California.
can guess
That's
my pronouns.
Yeah.
You haven't even asked what my pronouns are. I'm deeply offended.
Yeah, I did figure I had to. So I guess my point, to further that discussion a little bit, I have a problem when let's say a 90-second reel or something like that, and it's supposed to be a hunting reel, and it's nothing but a B-roll infomercial for whatever camo or whatever boots or whatever bow or whatever release you're wearing. To me,
whatever
it's literally a commercial. And it's okay. You don't even have to go to their page and see who their sponsors are. You can tell by watching that 90-second clip, right? And then I also go and look at those same people's content. Show me content when you're in a tree stand, right? When you're spot and stalking an animal, it's none of that shit. It's literally just littered with these preset scripted, infomercial type B-rolly, with some background music in it and an occasional shot of a boob or a cheek hanging out here. And it just drives me crazy. I'm like, as a hunter, and I don't speak for everybody on this podcast, but if I saw that, that's not going to go make me buy a bow or buy that camo or anything else. But apparently it's working, because there's plenty of people out there that are getting paid to do that.
Yeah, look, and I mean, I'm less concerned about those individuals, in that I'm focused and I'm doing my own thing, and I believe that the cream rises to the top. When concerning sponsorships, and particularly money, it's different in Australia, in that our hunting economy is very juvenile as well, and so any money that changes hands between a hunting brand and a hunter is hard won. It is not easy to get money. Now, product, that's very different, and I'm sure is the case in America as well. I get emails every day, people throwing me product, and I don't want it, and I don't take it. And it's especially thermal companies, my goodness, because we're having a bit of a thermal revolution in Australia at the moment concerning hunting, and all of these companies reaching out saying, we'll give you this, and you make this content. And it's like, you can give me a $3,000 Australian, $3,000, mind you, $3,000, so $1,500 US dollars, thermal monocular. It's going to cost me more than $1,500 to make a video for you. You have no idea how much time, effort, energy to do it well. Now, if you want me to send me a $1,500 monocular and I grab my phone and I film a quick TikTok in my bikini, that's different. But not necessarily good. But I understand the frustrations. I feel like brands are hopefully getting smarter, and that there will be a season where that no longer happens. I hope. I mean, I don't even. I understand that it frustrates you. I don't look at it. It's not where I play. I don't even look at other Australian hunting videos from other Australian hunters to compare with, because it's not of concern to me. I'm watching the people who I think are light years away from me, and who I draw inspiration from, and who I want to be better like. But other than that, I just play in my space, and I don't care if I produce a video and it doesn't get thousands and thousands of views, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of views. I don't really look at my analytics. I don't know really what my audience even wants. I'm just making what I want to make, what I think will help our community, and everyone else can do whatever they want to do. And if they want to burn the world down, that's fine. Just leave the patch where I live.
Yep. You're doing it for you.
Yeah. Doing it for me. I've gone down the rabbit hole of trying to do it for other people and burning myself out. And we were talking earlier before the camera was rolling about losing your love for hunting. Man, that's something precious that you have to protect. If you're not hunting without a camera and you're doing it to any serious degree, producing content, you're in a dangerous place. That's just a matter of time. That's a ticking time bomb. I'm happy to say that I enjoy hunting by myself without a camera more than anything else. That's my happy place. That is, I love it. I love it. And I love giving myself permission to not produce anything, not even take a photo, not even produce a reel. It's just like, I'm here. This is for me. And I'm just going to enjoy it. And I'm going to be focused. Otherwise, these people who are doing this content, they're going to burn themselves. That's like, we can get all frustrated and grumpy, and it is negatively influencing the culture. And so that is something to be concerned about and to moderate and keep in check. But at the same time, these people are digging their own graves. If you want to be shallow and if you want to have no integrity, if you want to make poor business decisions, like I'll give you my advice if you ask for it. Otherwise, if you want to burn down that house, like, you know where the matches are.
You got to say it one time. Say
No, I can't. We are very family friendly, clean.
Oh, we started.
You trying to get my sponsors to fire me? What are you doing?
Right?
We're just talking about stewardship.
Yeah. So, and you just brought up that point, and I wanted to circle back. Stephen, you got me going somewhere else. It was right there. So today, before the cameras rolling, I talked about I went on a pheasant hunt today. So I am not that guy. I have not been for the last several years. If I'm hunting, there has to be some content derived from it. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job. For the first time in years,
Hey, let me ask you a question real quick. Did you get any of that on film?
I didn't take a camera.
Then
none
of it counts. That's what you say. None of it counts.
Happen.
It didn't happen. That's what I preached to him. If it's not on camera, it didn't happen. And I had a great day. I think I was 27 for 33 on pheasants today. It was so much fun. I never even took a picture. Not a single picture on my phone. Not a short. Not a nothing. Not a story. For the first time, I went out and just hunted to have a good time, just to relax. And it was. And I'm actually in.
Are you willing to get your phone now, open up your photos, most recent photos, and put it towards the camera to prove that?
Yeah,
I call bullshit. I call bullshit too,
brother. It is right here. I'll airdrop that to you right this second. There is not a single picture from today. I promise you that. And frankly, we're doing the black buck hunt this weekend with Mike, and I'm thinking, do I really want to film this? We've got so much other content. Can we just go out there, have a good time, enjoy our friends, and just not do it? Because we don't need it at this point in time.
Take some drinky drinks.
Exactly. Enjoy it, and that's what I'm thinking about doing. So it is nice. And just like I said, full transparency, it's the first time in years and years and years I actually did not take a camera or even take my cell phone out of my pocket, and I didn't give it. And I had a great time.
Sean, this is the issue, right? Is that it's a matter of integrity, and integrity is difficult in the best of circumstances. Integrity in the hunting world is it's so elusive. It's so difficult. And when the pressure's on and you're making money, or there's pressure to make easy money, integrity is it's just hard. And there's people that have it, and there's people that don't. And I believe you. I trust you at your word that you went out there and you did that. But it's also tempting to kind of, even on a podcast, to say that because that's the right thing to say, and your goals and your motivations can be for all the right reasons, because you want to produce a positive ethical hunting culture, and still slip up. Like maybe you did take a photo, and I wouldn't judge you for that if you did. And I'm not suggesting to your audience that you did either.
Not. I didn't
But that's
take
what I'm going.
a single
The
photo.
The point I'm making is that integrity is difficult, and we should be supporting those people that have integrity, because the cost to them to do that is incredibly high. And if you don't support them, whether that's with your attention in watching the right kind of content or subscribing, for a channel like this is a little point for me, but integrity for my channel means never asking people to subscribe. You'll never hear it once on the Huntsman saying like and subscribe. I've never asked anyone to do that, because I don't want to feel like people are like I'm leading them or I'm manipulating them. If they like it, if they actually physically, like if they enjoy the content, they will like and they will subscribe. But there's a cost to me to not say that. But for me, integrity is worth more. And when you watch shows, when you're watching social content, everyone can see who has integrity and who doesn't. And that's worth far more than a free bit of kit or $1,000 to promote a bow
or a t-shirt.
Yeah, or a t-shirt. People lose their mind. People do stupid things for products. When I work with brands, and for the first time, like when we're having initial conversations, and they say, "Oh, we'll give you all of this product," I was like, "I don't care." Like, if I like, if I liked your product, I would have bought it already, and we'd be we would have already been working together, because I would have reached out to you and I would have said, "Hey, I use this, rifle sling. It's changed my life. It's awesome. I'd love to help promote it." Like blah blah blah, and we would go down that journey. But when it's just like, here, if you have all this product and you can make this content for us, the product for me is only useful to help with the promotions. It's just I need to physically have it so I can show it being used. And I only do that with brands that I've already worked with, like already had the product beforehand or used or wanted to use. These people that will take a free t-shirt and for like 6 hours of their time, or for an hour of their time, or for their reputation and their integrity making a quick reel, what a waste. What a disastrous thing you can do for yourself and your own values, and it's terrible.
And I get it, and that's one thing we've never caved ever, and we won't. So we vet everything
because you're American,
we do. Right? But so we anything we use is because we vetted it, and it's what we want to use in the field that works for us. Whether, like you said, whether it's a rifle, whether it's a rifle sling, whether it's a type of camo or clothing or a boot or something like that, it's because we've gone out, we've purchased it ourselves, we've read the reviews, we've tried it out, and it works. If it's not that, I don't listen.
But to be honest with you, we've never talked about hardly anything. Yeah, nothing.
No, we don't.
I mean? We don't.
No.
I mean, what's the point, right? If it's good, you're going to own it, right?
Yeah. This is the unique challenge as well, though, that I don't think people understand when you're getting to the point where you're producing a caliber of show that's of a high enough quality that it can be on television, for instance. There is a monetary value associated with how much it costs to produce that. And as a creator, you can have all the best intentions in the world, but you can't just keep eating that cost. It's irresponsible if you do so. And so there is this dance between...
That's an expensive hobby.
To pay for production, to produce something that is going to help educate, that is going to help form, that is going to shift and push the community in the right direction, that is going to be entertaining. That all costs money. And so there's this... Then this is where integrity comes in. It's very, very difficult to get money in the door, at least in Australia, in the hunting space. And so you have to work really hard to get any money at all. And there's a huge temptation to work with just anyone who's selling any product who's just going to help fit the bill, because your desire and your intention is so strong to make something, and you're like, I just want to do this, and I just need to pay for this and a couple extra $1,000, and I can get that cameraman, and then it's going to be great because my intentions are pure. But that's a slippery slope. And so it's very, very, very difficult line to walk. I imagine it's similar in America, between getting enough money to help produce the show and compensate people adequately for their time and their skill and their energy, but also not selling out and not just working with a brand because they were willing to pay you $10,000 to showcase their bikini and their bow. It's a difficult line, and
Well, you're doing it for the wrong reasons in that case.
Well, but no, I don't even think. Well, maybe the bikini, the bow, but like,
yeah, you're definitely doing it for the wrong reasons.
I mean, you guys know this that we do costs money, right? There's a cost associated with doing that, and if you're not bringing money through the door, right, then it's especially like with you, Chris. This is your primary job. This is what you do now. You don't have a choice. That money has to come through one way or the other, whether it's in sponsorship deals or it's in subscriptions, monetization, whatever. We're in a slightly different position. So we all have full-time jobs, and we've kind of decided over the past couple of years that the whole sponsorship thing in itself is a slippery slope, right? Yeah, because I don't want anybody telling me what I can and can't say. And because we're fortunate enough that we're in an industry we all work for a fairly good size architecture and engineering firm. And so the money to produce these things and go do these things isn't a giant, like, it's not detrimental. Like, if I don't bring in $10,000 this quarter for Salt Lake, we're still going to make content. We're still going to continue to hunt and do it because it's stuff we were going to do anyway. We've only shifted to filming it and kind of, telling the story about it. So it's not a huge thing for us, but because of that, we're in a new position where I don't have to pick up a sponsorship, period, like anybody. Now, I've certainly looked at affiliate programs and I get 50 emails a week, hey, this would be great. And we do have some deals, and full transparency, I've got deals with Kuyu and I've got deals with SIG. They don't send us product. I never rep their It's based on, it's essentially an outfitter program where we get a discount. We buy our own stuff, but they do give us a discount to do it, but there's no strings attached. That was it. Right. So we've got some with First Light, we've got some with Kuyu, we've got some with SIG, and there's a couple of others too, but that's the extent of it. Like, but as soon as somebody walks through the door and tells me what I can and can't say, that I just couldn't do it, because then I feel like I'm not being truthful to our audience. And, like I said, I'm the guy that runs off at the mouth and I'm quick to bark at somebody. And I would just feel weird. Like, if I didn't, if I couldn't do that and didn't have the integrity to tell a sponsor to off, then, it's just not for me. But we went down a rabbit hole for like 47 minutes, by the way, guys.
I mean, let me just, like, if I can wrap up that segment with an interesting bit of commentary. Going back to what I said before about how I feel a responsibility towards helping shape the Australian hunting landscape, a big part of that is the industry, is the economy. And so that means working with Australian hunting brands and international brands who are wanting to have a presence in Australia. And if people aren't buying hunting products in Australia, the community won't grow, or it will grow in a stunted, weird direction. And so it sounds strange, but a lot of my time, effort, energy in my job is working with hunting brands to help them understand the vision of what we're trying to do with the show, and to partner alongside them and help them manage their expectations, as well as guide them on how we should be doing this, and being considerate. And if we are going to promote products, how we can do that in an authentic and real way. And I'm happy that, and this sounds like a bit of a fairy tale comment, but none of our sponsors ask us to do anything. One sponsor has asked me, something happened, and they said, "Ooh, that wasn't very good, Chris. Please don't do that again." And I said, "You're totally right. It was terrible. I won't do that again." But they were actually keeping me accountable, which I really appreciated. But other than that, there can be a synergy between brands and businesses, basically, where everyone wins. And the longer time you spend with those brands, working with those brands over, like for us, that's consecutive seasons, the better those relationships get, and the less work is required to maintain them. You just kind of get in a flow. And the brands that we had on for season 2 were fantastic. We've got even more brands coming on for season 3. But it takes a lot of effort and energy and work to integrate and promote those products and brands in the content without it feeling like a sales reel or a commercial, like you said. That there's a skill involved in that. Not many people have that skill, which is why it looks terrible. It takes time, effort, energy, education, research, learning, and honing to integrate it naturally and to not be a sellout. And people aren't willing to spend the time, like goes back to integrity, right? People aren't willing to spend the time, creators, to learn how to do that, which is why it looks terrible, which is why it's damaging those relationships. If more people took it seriously and said no to certain companies, or helped that manage their expectations, or helped drive the conversation around how that's going to be done, then it would be better and it would be more achievable for different content creators. Anyway, rant over.
Yeah, no, and that's perfect. And I think, ultimately, especially with these big brands, you're not necessarily dealing with a CFO or a VP, or you're dealing with the marketing department, right? And they've got this view of what this brand needs to look like and what it should represent. So you're not, a lot of times I feel like you're not led down a road because of a moral or ethical uh, what's the best way to say this without sounding like a total douche?
Just sound like a douche.
Yeah. So to be bound by a moral and ethical compass and drive people for the right reasons to your brand, rather than just being a sellout, right? So and that's hard if I owned a camo clothing company, for example, and those same people I just bitched about, right, on TikTok and all these reels and everything, if they can push product and sell product, it would be hard for me as a business owner not to hire them. So I understand, once again, that's a double-edged sword, right? It can be good for business, but at the other time, did you just sell your soul to the devil to do that, right? To make that buck. But ultimately, they're in the business of making money. So they've got to do whatever they got to do to get to make that money to stay in business. And I understand that. And once again, here we go down to that thing again. So that's
it's good. So it's about integrity. And if you maintain integrity, I believe there is a world, a consumeristic world that we can live in, where people make money, people can make a lot of money, but they can maintain their integrity. I don't think it needs to be a race to the bottom to make the most money. I think there's a way to do it. It's not easy, which is why people don't do it, because people are lazy.
Right. So let's get back to, so one of the unique things that I wanted to talk to you about is just your country in general. So
it's not my country. I just live in it.
Well, I mean, I feel like you're one of two Australian people that I know. So it's yours and Bill's. So I got two Australians that I know. Yeah. So your country, it's really unique. You've got a ton of biodiversity and geographic diversity, and it's just and the species that are there. I mean, obviously a lot of the deer species that you have, several other countries do, and we even in the US have some of those same species. But it's this whole thing of going out in the bush in Australia from watching TV as kids or watching movie as kids. There's something about Australia that just kind of, like, as a hunter, I want to go to Australia and hunt. Like, and for whatever reason,
Crocodile Dundee's. Why?
Yeah, it wasn't just.
I was going to
Mick.
say that.
Oh, it wasn't just Mick and that
That's
fucking Bowie knife. That this is a knife. Oh no, you can live on it, but it tastes like shit. One of my favorites. But no, your country's so cool and it's so unique. And like, I didn't realize. I mean, I always knew there was hunting in Australia, but for whatever reason, I tended to look more towards New Zealand, right? For whatever reason, I think it's got maybe well marketed or marketed a little better, I should say. So, I tend to think of New Zealand as a hunting destination and not so much in Australia. And then kind of when I ran into you and your show, I'm like, holy shit, like the hunting is just as good in Australia, if not as good or better than it is in New Zealand. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. Yeah. But talk to me a little bit about that. The diversity. So you've got all these different biomes, right? And like a 2-hour drive from the coast, you go through like 3 different biodiverse areas. And you can be in, kind of a tropical environment. Then you can go to arid, and then you can be in an alpine environment, and just in a couple hours. And that's really unique to what you guys have there. And I'm sure because of the the diversity of the species too. Like they'll gravitate to one area or the other, and it makes it really cool for, getting out there. Whereas like me in Florida, for example, where I live, it's flat. It's flat and there's an occasional swamp and you can see for miles. We don't have a hill until you go, they call it 600 kilometers north, right? That's the first, and it's a little hill too, like just maybe, I don't know, 15 meters kind of hill. That's it. There's no terrain change, no anything. But you guys, I mean, you've kind of got it all there. And then you get into the Outback. That's a harsh environment there too in your country. I mean, you've got desert-like stuff. There's parts of your country that I wouldn't want to go. There's no doubt in my mind that like people go out there and they never come back.
You just, I don't think I need to say anything. You just, that's the commercial. There you go. Let's wrap it up and ship that out to all the Americans to come here to Australia. No, you're right. We've got incredible diversity. We've got desert like Arizona and New Mexico. We've got wooded, lush forest like Washington State. We've got rugged mountains like Nevada. We've got everything. We've got alpine. We've got snowline. We've got huge rivers. It's a ecological dream, and a lot of it is along the east coast. So top of Australia, we have Queensland, and then New South Wales below that, and then Victoria and Tasmania below that, and that's where the bulk of hunting happens in Australia, in those regions. However, we do have the Northern Territory, which is fairly popular for buffalo, bentang, which is like a kind of like a cow, a bull. And then we also have something called scrub bulls, which were essentially domestic bulls that have gone wild over the course of hundreds of years and are now gnarly, crazy things that will just kill you. We have crocodiles, we have kangaroos, we have wild deer, goat, pigs, foxes, rabbits, hares, quail, ducks, pheasants, bush turkeys. There's just an incredible amount of animals in Australia. And you're right, it really hasn't been marketed, but it goes back to what I said before, in that the hunting community and lifestyle is still quite new in Australia. And so we haven't really, and because we don't have we have a rich heritage of hunting, because obviously we were colonized and there was hunting involved, in with those people. The British. I know you guys have had issues with the British too. You had a war or two.
Yeah.
We did it peacefully. We just ignored them after a period of time.
No, we took the Sean approach and said, you get out.
Yeah. We're still part of the colony. We just ignored their rule. We're rebels. But yeah, it's New Zealand they embrace the hunting culture very early, and they've done a great job marketing it. We haven't done that in Australia, even though we have fantastic opportunities. I mean, we have like the third largest deer in the world, Samba, here, and they're plentiful. So you can go out and you can get a life, like an amazing trophy. But people aren't doing it, especially Americans aren't doing it, and it's always blown my mind. And so one of the things that I do is I run a website called huntingtrips.com.au, Hunting Trips Australia, which essentially is a conglomerate of all of the outfitters in the country represented in this website, like Airbnb, where you can jump into the website and you can search for a species, whether you want to hunt it with a bow or a rifle, what your budget is, where in Australia you want to hunt, and it spits out all of the guides and all of the various packages, and then you can go and reach out to those individuals. And it's totally free to use. In fact, it's free for the outfitters to use as well. I don't make any money off that site, even though it does 90,000 views a month. And I do that, and I'm happy to wear the cost of maintaining and building that, because I want the industry to grow. I want Americans to come to Australia and experience what we have. I want you to come and shoot 6-12 deer if you want to, because once that economy booms, then our government will wake up and go, "Ooh, there's money here. Maybe we should
lots and lots
this.
of money."
Yeah, lots and lots of money. Maybe we should stop culling these deer and start making money off these deer. In fact, if we can make the Americans pay for it, let's do that.
Stick it to them.
Exactly.
There's a saying that I learned years and years ago when I started going to Africa, and the saying is, if it pays, it stays. And that is very much true. Hey, there is one animal though, and I'll just bring this up quickly. I don't want to get too sidetracked. There's an animal that's in Australia that you didn't talk about. It didn't list off there, and that's a
Oh
camel.
boy. Sean's nemesis, the camel.
So
have you watched the camel episode?
I actually have watched the camel episode, and that was
I hit
unique
him
for
up
me.
the other day and said, "Hey, did you watch this camel episode?" I said that was pretty. That was definitely different.
Well, and so we'll definitely dive in the camel episode because I thought it was cool and it was super unique, and I was like, this is going to piss some people off, and some people are going to think it's cool. You had a set of shooting sticks on your rifle.
Oh yeah.
It looked like we've got these they're called trigger sticks, right? Where you can adjust them, but they're essentially still a bipod up and down. But yours was mounted to your rifle, and it came in like you can prop it off your hip. You could probably that thing would I've never seen anything like that. That was unique shit. I'm like,
Chris,
holy
don't plug this in here. Don't do it.
Integrity.
That thing was cool.
That's a friend of mine too. So I'm going to go down I'm helping my friend out here. I'm not plugging your product. No,
Sean, put the link in the bottom.
I'll give you guys an affiliate link.
Yeah, here it is, right up here, folks. It's going to be right up here.
It's called the Hyperpod. It's from a company called Smart Rest, and Eagle Eye Hunting Gear is a larger company that also sells it. It's the same company, but kind of different branches. And essentially, my friend Michael designed that because he was going out and doing all this contract shooting and didn't want to carry around a set of sticks with him. And he wanted to be able to shoot in various terrains. So whether it's sitting or kneeling or standing, he didn't want to have to find a tree to brace against or use some sticks. And so we came up with this this tool. And I must admit, when I first started using it, and full disclosure, they're a sponsor of season 2, which is part of the reason why I got connected with Michael in the first place. But I started using it and I didn't like it. And the reason why I didn't like it was because it was different, not because it was bad, because I wasn't used to hunting with it. And it takes some adjustment. And hunters, as you know, as anyone listening knows who's hunted, you get very much set in your ways and you like a certain thing and that's what you do. But after about 2 months of using it, I thought, geez, this is a game changer. This is incredible. This is a great bit of kit that I can shoot comfortably in any position. I can shoot essentially what we call freehand, but have a support. I can dig it into my hip or into my stomach or however I want to do it. I can do it kneeling. I can do it standing. I can do it prone. It's a fantastic tool. It's a really, really cool tool that enables you to hunt in any space. And especially when you're doing like what we're doing and you're filming a show, you don't want to be carrying around a whole bunch of gear. So having it strapped to your rifle is fantastic. It's a great idea. Hyperpod 2.
Hyperpod
from
2.
Smart Rest.
You heard it here first, folks.
Coming to America soon.
Yes, well,
no, it's in America. They already sell to America.
Nice. Yeah, I'll actually I'll overlay the clip right here.
All right, so we're going to cross over this creek here and then go up the side of the hill to get back onto those camels we've just moved around. Before I do that, I thought it's a good opportunity to talk about this. This is the Hyperpod 3 from Eagle Eye Hunting Gear. You've seen me talk about the Hyperpod 2 before. Absolutely love it. Huge fan of it. This has just come out on the market, and the major improvement is that no longer do you have to adjust the height of your shooting stick with the tabular system. Now it has this here, so you can essentially use this little trigger here to adjust the height, and you can lock it off here, and then you're fixed. So I'm going to use this. I've got the Bipod 2 here on the bottom. Tuck it in like this. Lift it up. Totally stable. So I'm going to use this on the camels. But I thought before we get up there and it gets a bit intense and a bit wild and woolly and you don't know what's going to happen, I talk about this. Shooting.
So people can watch it while we're talking too. So because it was really cool. That was one thing that I noticed, that I obviously clicked on the video because it was camel hunt. And that was unique. And then I saw that. I'm like, oh, let me back that up. What the hell is that thing that he's using? That was kind of cool. But yeah, so you've got free range camels in Australia. I didn't know that was a thing until I saw your video. And not to mention, I think you threw a stat out there that's 100,000, several hundred, whatever. I figured there, was some at zoos kind of thing, but camels I didn't figure were native from Australia. And the idea that you guys have just that many blew my mind. Like,
Yeah, so
holy shit.
they're not just free range either; they're wild. Through the middle band of Australia and to the west, they're all throughout our deserts. They're introduced initially when Australia was colonized as a way to travel across Australia to form expeditions to explore new territories, and they would actually bring in what they called cameleers, which were people of Middle Eastern descent, to come to Australia and teach Australians how to use the camels, to handle the camels. And they brought these camels in. There's actually an interesting story that video actually walks through about Harry, who was the first camel, and I won't spoil what happened to Harry, but it's a great story. But
Hit the guy on the
yeah,
head.
they they were used up until a point, and then they became redundant, and so they just, like they did for many things in Australia, they just let them all go. And now we have wild camel in Australia. In fact, we have the largest population of wild camel anywhere in the world, which is for a certain species, for the camel that has a single hump, not the double humped ones. So you can come to Australia and you can hunt a camel. And camel, let me tell you, like, get people's mouths salivating. Camel meat is incredible. It is
I was going to ask that.
delicious. It's hard to describe. It's closer to beef, but it has this sweet tone to it. And you get a lot of it. Like, you get a lot.
Oh, I'd imagine.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I wanted the seasoned version, no, not the unseasoned version. That's why you mix it up there before you put it on the Barbie.
So my next question is, what did you shoot that with? I see you had to take 3 shots at it. So
the 3 shots is interesting because let me speak to that so I can squash all the haters.
It looks like all 3 of them were on the shoulder to me.
All 3 of them were less than an inch apart.
Yeah.
So and shots 2 and 3 were when the camel was on the move. So take that however you will, but
must have been the sticks.
the trouble with producing a hunting show, and then the added complexity of working with brands is, and goes back to that integrity, is there's a temptation to doctor and change the content to fit what people want to see or what they think.
One-shot kills. Yeah.
And a one-shot kill, no brand wants to, especially if they're the company that's the rifle or the ammunition, wants to see an animal suffer. I don't want to see an animal suffer. They want to see it shot through the vitals and drop on the spot. And anyone who's hunted more than one hunting trip knows that happens and that doesn't happen. And that's part of hunting. And you can shoot an animal through the vitals, like Samba, for instance. You can shoot with a 300 caliber, or it's a 30-06 or a 308 or a Win Mag or whatever. You can shoot it through the heart and through the lungs, and it can run for a kilometer, because that's the kind of animal that they are, on pure adrenaline. They're just incredible animals. And I didn't want to shoot the camel in the head because I could have, because that doesn't look great on camera. And so I took a shot and went through the lungs. It didn't go through the heart, it went through the lungs. And had I left the camel, it would have died maybe 10 meters away, 15 meters away, within a minute or two. But I didn't know if that was what was going to happen. And so, because I think planning and preparation is important, and because I wanted to get the footage of the animal dropping, I put 2 more shots through. Yeah. And it's hard. You can't film a video, or you don't want to include that conversation in the video saying, well, I'm producing a hunting show and I need to make sure the animal drops, and that's important for the brands, and blah, 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 blah. Because people are like, I don't care. Like, I just want to see an animal getting shot, or I want to see a hunting video. But that's the reality, is that I could have just let it walk. And there's this temptation as well to kind of defend yourself. You feel like, it's like, no, the first shot was awesome. The first shot was perfect. There's no other way that could have gone down unless I shot it in the head, which I didn't want to do. And I don't need to defend myself on social media. I don't need to defend myself on YouTube. But there's that human part of you that goes, oh, I just want to be loved. I just want people to accept me. And I did the right thing and it was a good shot. And I'm like, no. And so now I'm just whinging to you guys and to the rest of America on this podcast about it. But yeah, so that was interesting. But it was, to answer your question, it was a 30-06 I think is what you call them. We call them 3006. But in hindsight, it probably would have been better to use a 375. That's what I used on the buffalo, and that dropped with a single shot.
Yeah. Well, we had an experience with some giraffes this year, and we kind of went a different direction than we were taught the first year we were there. Well, I'm not going to tell him that. I'm not going to tell him your story. I'm talking about placement, shot location. About shooting them in the head or shoot them like maybe a camel's just like a giraffe. You hit them right in the neck, and they just fold.
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy. It's because we were taught 2 inches back below the eye, and this you got to hit something the size of a quarter, right? And now you go there this year, and it was like just hit them right here in the neck, and they just fold.
Yeah,
and sure
base
shit,
of the
they
neck
did
through the spine.
I mean, they just
it's
crazy.
That spine's that big on a giraffe.
Yeah,
so and it goes all you got to do is hit it, and so it's more margin of error for sure. And people that are still shooting them in the body, that's like no.
Yeah, and the weight that they're bearing on for a giraffe or for a camel, like they can't, even if you nick the spine, they can't support the weight of that neck and head.
You want to talk about adrenaline and running forever? 4 hours later.
Well, that's the trouble as well, is that with and I talk about this a little bit in that camel video, in that I'd never shot a camel before. This is the first camel that I'd shot. I didn't know anyone that had shot a camel, and so I didn't have anyone to go to say, what do I do? And so in that moment, when I took that shot, all I was thinking was, I do not want to bungle this. I want the animal to go down as quickly as possible. I don't care how it looks. I just want it. I just want to guarantee that it goes down, and it goes down quickly.
Well, your instinct's the heart, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's what your instincts. That's what you've been taught. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I also I didn't want to. This is purely selfish, but I didn't want to shoot it in the head because I didn't like the way that would look in the content. But also, I wanted to keep the skull. I'm a huge meat hunter, so everything I hunt, I eat. But also, I taxidermy everything. I don't do like shoulder mounts or anything. I do Euro mounts, but then I also do rugs and do the hides. And so I was like, well, I don't want to smash the skull. I don't want the skull to be in pieces. Like I want to keep the skull. I've literally got it here, like 3 meters away from me. I can bring it out and show you. But it's incredible. Like it's cool. But again, that's not something that you can just chuck in your video lightly.
Yeah. So fantastic eating, huh?
Oh man, so good. A bit gristly.
It looked good.
Like, quite a lot of gristle through it. But I mince a lot of my meat because of my boys. My youngest prefers meat doesn't look like meat, so we do a lot of hamburgers, sausages. We do a lot of lasagnas. We do a lot of chili, bolognese, all that kind of thing. Whereas my eldest son, he is a disgusting carnivore, and he will be chewing the fat for hours. The gristlier the bone,
he'll my kid right there.
Smack your hand at me in the corner, chewing on it. Is
Mike, tell Chris your favorite meat in Africa.
Oh, by far zebra.
Wow. Okay. See, I've got zero experience with Africa or South Africa, so I'd be really interested to know what the meat tastes like.
No, it's really good. Really good.
And you think, we caught some on a giraffe hunt I did a couple of years ago. But it is what it is. I shot the giraffe in the head, but I shot it with an FPJ.
You really catch shit on this year's.
Yeah, so I decided
if you would have videoed it.
So, we did video it, but I decided to hunt a giraffe with a bow this year.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it
with Luminox. You know what Luminox is on the end of an arrow? No, it's strobe when you shoot.
Okay.
So when you shoot it, it hits the animal, and then it starts strobing, so you can see your arrow.
Okay.
It looked like it was December. It was Christmas time.
It was like a rave.
But
that's all you saw was flashing lights going through the midnight sky.
So Santa's deer running.
It was. I tell you, I find it was bad.
It was Rudolph.
It was awesome.
Wasn't his nose that was awesome.
Well, I finally just said, you know what, the ethical side of me, listen, I'm not going to let this son of a bitch run forever. I'm going to put it down, and I grabbed the radio and I called my PHA, Chris. It's like, yeah, what is it? Would you please bring me the 300, sir? I am done trying to stick this thing with a BB gun. And
4 hours into it, it was awesome.
And my first shot looked, and I've gone through the footage 100 times, and I don't know how I could have shot that animal any better. But instantly, our PH looked back. He's like, "That's 3 inches high."
Well, if you weren't shooting a 30-pound bow, it would have penetrated.
A giraffe is 20 foot high. What the? His heart is so that your camel heart video you showed in the heart of the camel.
Yeah,
that was a giant heart. A giraffe heart is easily double the size of that camel heart on a big bull giraffe. That's how. So if you miss by 3 inches, right? Not the end of the world. Well, apparently
it's called penetration, Sean. Penetration, bud.
Well, and their skin is also about that thick too.
If you were shooting something other than 30 pounds, it would have went in further.
I imagine the heart has to be bigger to pump the blood up through the neck.
That's exactly what it is.
A bigger organ. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and apparently with a giraffe too, like if they put their head down, they can only put their head down to drink water for, I don't know, 5 seconds or something.
Otherwise,
or they'll pass
they knock
out.
themselves out.
Yeah, that would be funny.
Yeah, so you did the camp. What else is unique? Like, so if we're gonna have lots of Americans watch our show, right? So if what's your favorite animal to hunt?
Samba. Yeah, Samba deer are we call them the ghost of the bush. They're a huge animal. They can be up to 600 kilos. They are just incredible animals, and they are curious, but they're also masters of stealth. And so you can walk through the bush and in a heavy timbered area and walk straight past one and just not see it because they just don't move. They're not like a fallow deer that will spook the second that they see you. They're not a herd animal. You won't find them in large groups. You'll find isolated stags, and you might find, we call the females hinds, like similar to a red hind. And obviously we call them does for fallow and bucks. But so it's a stag and a hind, and you might find a hind with a yearling or a small group of hinds, maybe 2 or 3, and maybe a stag with them, but they cycle all year round. And so the stags just move wherever they want, and they cover large, swaths of territory. And you can call them in using an elk call, using a cow call, but which will also attract a hind as well, who's curious or who kind of piques her maternal instincts. If she thinks it's a young, like a yearling that's suffering, she might come in and have a look and get defensive. They have this, you'd probably call it a bark. We call it a honk. It's this sound. If you're listening to this and you've never heard a Samba alarm call, a Samba honk, Google it, look it up, YouTube it. It's this intense, loud, metallic-like sound, the short burst of sound that you can hear like a kilometer away. And it's just incredible. When you get honked by a Samba, it is like the greatest feeling in the world. I mean, it's frustrating because you know that they know you're there, but it's wild. They're just the most amazing animals to hunt. Incredible. And we have them in Victoria, and we're starting to have them up in New South Wales as they travel up the coast.
Well, and I was going to start with a with a controversial subject from our perspective, from a U.S. perspective.
Kangaroos.
Stupid. Yep, that's where I was going to start. And then I saw the camel video. I'm like, I think this may be more controversial. But so what's the deal with kangaroo hunting? So the limited amount that I know, is it completely outlawed now aside from eradication, or is there actually a season? Can you hunt kangaroo? What's the deal?
So we don't even use the word hunting in reference to kangaroos because we don't hunt them. They're protected species. They're a native species. And so they're never, ever hunted. If they're shot, it's because they're being managed. And essentially, it's a property owner who has applied for tags because they have some sort of agricultural interest and they need to reduce the number of kangaroos that are grazing on their property. And so they can apply for that. And then there's also a meat market for kangaroo, whether that's through our supermarkets or whether it's for dog food or just to export internationally. So that's a part of it as well. And then at different times in different places, the government may do a managed culling program where they reduce the number of kangaroos. So they're never, ever in quote hunted. And to be honest, I know that you have them in places like Texas and stuff. They're
Witness
not
that.
Yeah, well, they're not fun to hunt. They're the
No,
dumbest
I actually
animals in the world.
I guided a kangaroo hunt, and it was the most
No,
boring.
you walked a
thing
hunter
ever.
up to a kangaroo who shot it. You didn't guide.
That's what. No, that's what. No,
Dude.
yeah, like. No,
Well,
that's exactly.
it's in his defense. He was drunk, so he may have hunted a little bit.
No, I wasn't drunk that day. I was hungover that day, but I was not drunk that day. So
it's interesting. Like, to give you some context with what's interesting and unique about kangaroos, and if you want to get into controversy, we can get into controversy surrounding them, because the controversy is not in hunting them. The controversy is we have too many of them. So they are everywhere, and they do incredible damage to our environments, and they do incredible damage to our agriculture. But because they are a natural native species, because they're on our currency, no one does anything about them. The few small programs that are around to manage them. And so we have this problem where we have so many, this absolute surplus of herbivores in our in our landscape, and we have no major predators we have a few predators, but not as many apex predators as you would have in America or in places like South America or Africa. And so there's nothing to control them, and there hasn't been anything to control them for 4,000 years or so. And so we have this huge issue with these kangaroos, but because they're quintessentially Australian, nothing is being done to manage them and control
They're
them.
pretty mean too, aren't they?
They can be, yeah.
Yeah.
The big boys, I mean, you've probably all seen the pictures. They're like jacked. They just get really thick. And it's not just their claws, it's their feet as well that will essentially gut you. But I mean, you really have to annoy a kangaroo for it to want to hurt you. They're not angry or mean animals. They're just out in the pasture like cows, and if they see you, they'll just gingerly hop away. But they're everywhere. They're not like we have a huge issue with them. I think personally,
what's it taste like?
We tried it.
Yeah, it's good. It's a very lean meat. There's zero fat on them. Most of the meat is in the legs, a little bit in the tail, but it's just a really lean, kind of beefy, not beef, but closer to beef. It's good. You can't cook it for very long. Honestly, on a grill, maybe a minute, 60 seconds.
Because it's max. So lean.
Because it's
not
so
enough.
lean. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, people make mince out of them. People turn them into sausages and hamburgers and all sorts of stuff.
Well, you've also got, I saw something, and it might have been on the show notes. There's what's the deal around the going back and forth about banning duck hunting there? That's kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, we've had this controversy for about, I don't know how many years now, for a long time. So duck hunting is there's a season for duck hunting, and only certain states have that season. The season in Victoria has been under attention, and there's been political groups that have wanted to ban it because they feel it's inhumane. And inhumane, that's not the right word. Has nothing to do with humans. That it's violent and cruel, and that there are not enough ducks around, and that we're risking, destroying the populations, and these kind of claims. And so there's been really strong lobbies over the last couple of years, specifically the last 2 years, where the duck hunting community in Australia has felt like we were going to lose the season. And the season is quite short. It's like a month-long season. There's a daily bag limit, and it changes every year, but between 5 to 8 ducks per day. There's limited species that you can shoot, and that it feels like every year these rules get tighter. So the season gets smaller. This number of species gets smaller. And I thought that this last year, 2024, was going to be the end of duck hunting. I thought we were done. I thought that it was just going to go. There was so much pressure about it. There was so much media about it, and people claiming all sorts of things about wounding, and it took our.
It's the lead poisoning that gets them.
No, it's actually the activists that are running out into the swamps and grabbing what they think is a wounded duck that's just sleeping, and being like, "Oh, look, they shot this duck," and the duck's like flapping around. And but anyway, no, it was
you can't fix stupid.
it was our unions that actually stepped in, our trade unions, and aligned themselves with the duck hunting community and just said, if you get rid of this, we're just not going to work. We're going to go on strike, and you're going to lose millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. And then the government went, ooh, okay, we better we better do something about this, because there was an inquiry, there was research, there was a committee that was formed in the government that then came to the government with a recommendation that was, I don't know how many pages the recommendation was, but item number 1 was ban the duck season, and then it kind of went down from there about some other mitigation things. But essentially, the document that was provided, recommendation, was to get rid of it. And when we in the community saw that recommendation, that was like, okay, that's it, nail, in the coffin. It's done. But then the union stepped in and said, no, if you do take that recommendation, we're happy to modify the season. We're happy to increase hunter education. We're happy to ban lead shot for quail, because quail's kind of bundled into this as well, and do a bunch of other things because we understand some of your concerns. But we've done the research. Because all the research done by conservation groups, duck hunting clubs that actually spend the time and the money to do all this research, and they end up not going through with the recommendations and actually keeping the season, which is incredible. So duck hunting, I'm not sure people are optimistic about it. I am personally, but I'm a super optimistic person, and I feel like it's important to be optimistic if you want to see positive change. But it's definitely in a much better place than it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I didn't realize until kind of researching for this episode that duck hunting was such a big thing over there. But you guys are super passionate about duck hunting.
We are and we aren't. So we're passionate about it because we're stubborn and we don't want to see it go, and we value it. But in terms of the number of duck hunters versus the number of deer hunters, it's a fraction of our community. It's a small fraction, so all of the hoo-ha around it was really because with what's happening in South Australia with the eradication of deer, with the cullings that are happening in various parts of Australia with deer, and then with the duck hunting issue coming up, for a lot of hunters, that they felt like that was the writing on the wall. And if we didn't stop the flow here, there'd be knock-on effects for deer hunting. And so for the first time, it felt like in a long time, deer hunters were supporting duck hunters, and the smaller community lending their weight to them and their resources, because that's like, if we lose duck hunting, we'll lose deer hunting. And so it was for those reasons. But there's magpie geese in the Northern Territory, which are huge, big birds, and there's like quail and pheasant and all sorts of bird game hunting in Australia. That's quite awesome and unique.
Yeah, I never would have thought of Australia as being obviously I knew there was deer there and there's some other things, but the idea of duck hunting and bird hunting, pheasant, quail, stuff like that, I'd never, just for whatever reason, whether it's naive or, just the lack of representation from Australian outfitters in the U.S. And that's the other thing. I was going to go back to that for a second. The staff, and you and Paul have been SCI now, and you've been the Great American Outdoor Show. I see plenty of outfitters from New Zealand. I don't know that I've ever seen an outfitter from Australia at one of the big shows.
I haven't.
I can't remember a time, and they could be there, but I just don't remember ever seeing an outfitter at those big events from Australia. Because I'd have been, I'm one of those guys that I'll go up and talk to an outfitter. Hey, Australia, what the hell's there to hunt in Australia?
That's part of
everything, apparently.
Yeah, well, that's part of the issue, is that it's such a young industry that we haven't had the time to build up like outfitters. So we have lots of outfitters. We have probably over 150 outfitters across the country, all specializing in different things, from trophy hunting to education to meat hunting to the international market and the local market. Predominantly, it's all been Northern Territory that's attracted the international clientele. But probably the reason why you haven't seen it at external events is that the outfitters that do exist are still they're going to hate me for this. They're still trying to figure out how to monetize it, how to make it into a really profitable business. There's a few of them.
It starts with your government, like you said. I mean, that's where it starts.
Yeah.
Well, no,
it does.
I would disagree. I would say it starts with, foreigners coming to hunt.
No, it's the government. I mean, once the value's there, I mean,
it's both. And the trouble
you've got to get the hunters there first, right?
You do, but then if you have international clientele that come in expecting a certain level of quality and hospitality, and they don't receive that, then they're not going to share it with their friends. Then the industry will suffer. And so, especially in the Northern Territory, where the climates are so unforgiving and harsh, and the hunting is, I mean, if you're hunting water buffalo, it's brutal, and you do it during the dry season. So the temperatures are soaring through the roof. If you're not drinking water, you're dead. If your truck blows up, you're dead. So it's difficult. It's a difficult place to run a business, and we don't have a rich heritage of guides in this country who have subsequently helped teach and train and empower and inspire new guides. And so it's very early.
It's new.
It's new. It's new. And new in the sense of like, we've probably had guides in Australia now for 100 years. And that's still relative. I think that's relatively a new time. So yes, we have guides. We have great guides. We have guides all over the country, and those guides are getting better and better and better. They're all fantastic. And when I say this, let me preference this to save my butt. They're all fantastic hunters and guides in and of themselves. What's lacking is some of the client management, is some of the having high quality accommodation, is
selling
around
pieces.
Yeah.
Selling pieces, yeah.
Yeah, so it's more about polishing. We just need to polish the industry a little bit, and once we've polished it, then we can bring some more money in. But already there's some fantastic experiences you can do hunting in Australia. If you guys want to come down to Australia and hunt,
yes,
hit me up.
Yes,
I'm more than happy to take you out and we can shoot deer.
What's the best time? What's the best time of year to come?
When it's cold.
No, so that's the beauty of Australia is we don't have seasons.
You just said it was hotter than hell down there. I'm out. It's got to be
in
cold.
The Northern Territory, sure. The Northern Territory is the only time. Well, so there's no season in the sense that there's no time that you in the Northern Territory where you're not allowed to shoot an animal. There's a season in the sense that there's a dry season and a wet season. That's because it's closer to the equator. So it doesn't have the 4 seasons that most countries experience that we have for the rest of the country. We have very much a summer, autumn, winter, spring. So in the rainy season, it's still really, really hot, but it's the mud that's the issue. You just can't get anywhere. And it's difficult to get animals out and so on and so forth. But in terms of like the best time to come to Australia to hunt, there's hunting all year round. It doesn't stop. Only time, if you're a duck hunter, it will need to be during the duck hunting season, which is generally around April, although it changes. And if it's hog deer that you're after, it's similarly, it's in April. If it's any other species, it really comes down to if it's trophy hunting when they have their heads, when their heads are fully developed. Our rut and our roar, so we call it the rut for fallow deer, which is when they're croaking, and we call it the roar for red deer. That happens in April during the first cold spell, generally around the Easter weekend, and then they'll keep their heads for up until I'm going to say August, September. They'll start to lose them, but then rusa, which is another species of deer, they hold their head. They'll have their head growing later, and they have a different season for when they breed, and their heads will drop around December. And Samba, because they're constantly cycling, they're losing their heads all the time. So there's no perfect time to hunt a Samba stag because they could be anywhere from velvet to spikes to full hard antler. So that's the beauty of Australia.
Sean, will we have trouble getting the animals back home?
I don't know how that works there.
Yeah, no, not at all. There's like you can export meat, I believe.
We can't export meat.
We can't.
Sorry, not
USDA
meat.
is
Sorry,
definitely
trophies.
not going to let us. Yes.
Yeah.
Trophies are fine. Trophies come in and out of Australia all the time. There's rules and procedures around it, obviously paperwork,
Right.
but that's fine. Also, internationals using their country of origin's firearm license. There's plenty of documentation around that, and that's totally fine.
And that's a question I was going to ask. So for us, we're gun snobs, right? If we go on a trip, we bring our own rifles. We're comfortable with the rifle, and by God, that's what I'm bringing. Some countries you just can't do that, right? You're just not going to bring the foreign. How's Australia with foreigners bringing guns in the country?
You just really want to talk about guns. I'm getting the sense that this is a leading question.
He's pulling you in there, Chris. He's pulling you in.
I'll play ignorant. I'll go down the rabbit hole. That's fine. So yes, you can bring we call them firearms in Australia. We're a little bit more civilized than you guys. You can bring your firearms into Australia. There's different permits. Different states have different rules around what you can bring in. Western Australia is the wacky state in Australia that has the harshest gun rules, and for locals as well as for internationals. So it'd be very difficult to get a firearm from America into WA, but the rest of the country, there's really no issues apart from the fact that they have to meet our firearm criteria. So you wouldn't be able to bring in a semi-automatic. You wouldn't be able to bring in a fully automatic. But if it's a deer hunting rifle, if it's like anything from a 22 to a 300 caliber or even a bit bigger, there's no problems around that at all. There's just a bit of paperwork.
What about suppressors?
No, unfortunately, that's another issue in Australia that is mind-boggling. It's just so I'm gonna take the bait and I'm gonna lead you down the rabbit hole because I don't want you to leave me. I don't trust you.
He's going to be a leader, not a follower, Sean.
Exactly. I'm going to set the narrative. So in 1996 in Australia, we had something called the Port Arthur Massacre, which is still to this date the biggest mass shooting that we've had in the country, where I'm not sure how many people died, but 13 people were wounded. But there was definitely a high number of deaths. I'm sure you can put it in the show notes after this. But it shocked the country. And prior to this, we had fairly relaxed firearm laws, gun laws, semi-automatics, fully automatics, shotguns, rifles, all that stuff. And then this happened in less than 13 days. I think it was 13 days later, a whole bunch of legislation came in reforming gun laws instantly. It felt like it was overnight. And there was a buyback program, and the country was up in arms about it, very, very frustrated, very, very annoyed. And it changed gun culture in Australia from that point forward. And things like suppressors, like I'm not sure if it was in that particular legislation that suppressors were removed. I don't know the history on that specifically, but it just boggles my mind that we can't use suppressors. And I don't understand the logic behind it. We have very few shooting issues in Australia, whether they're accidental issues that happen in a hunting environment, or whether it's like a mass shooting. There's very, very, very few, which is amazing. But I don't understand then the fear behind suppressors, because the people who are suffering are the hunters whose hearing is damaged, and it also restricts the amount of animals that we can get, and doing so safely. So for me, I think adding suppressors like our brothers in New Zealand have is a no-brainer. But that's not a commonly well, at least our government doesn't believe so. But
Sean,
take me down the rabbit hole now.
When did we allow suppressors back? It hasn't been long that we've allowed them back here in the United States.
No, because it was part of the original. It was part of that assault rifle ban that initially kicked off. So that was 1970. Was it 75 or 85 when the original ban came in?
Yes.
Okay, so it's one of the two, and that was included in there. So it's really, I'm going to say the last 10 years is when we've really been able to get them, but it requires a special federal tax stamp. The problem with it has been for years and years and years is that it's a lengthy process. So I know my first suppressor that I bought, this was, call it 6-7 years ago, it took somewhere between 18 and 20 months to actually get. So you go in, you purchase it, you do your paperwork, and then it sits in a vault somewhere until your tax stamp comes back, and then you can obtain it and use it. Now there's been so much pushback here from, especially towards the ATF, that they've actually expedited the process and they put it all online. So Paul bought his first suppressor. It was several months ago now, but it was, what was your overall process time to get it? Like 2 weeks ish?
Yes, roughly,
Something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah,
And people have started to finally realize there's now legislation in place to just completely remove it as a class 3 item in itself, because it's not a firearm. It's a device that helps preserve our hearing. And frankly, it's great for kids. It's great for recoil mitigation. There's so many things to choose for. This goes back to me, the old 80s action movies, right? Where you've got this guy that screws on this suppressor, onto this 9mm or this 45, and it goes poo, 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 and the neighbor can't hear it next door. Anybody
Yeah.
that knows anything about ballistics understands that that's not what happens. If
Thank you,
that
James Bond.
round,
Yeah,
exactly,
oh, James Bond.
if that if that round is traveling faster than the speed of sound, you're going to have a sonic boom, right? So it's going to crack. There's nothing you can do about that until you go subsonic, which is a specialty round that nobody uses and it's expensive. So unless you're in a special ops type environment where you're where it's a 300 blackout and you specifically need subsonic rounds, you're gonna, and even then you're still going to hear it. It just it does a great job with recoil mitigation, and I don't have to wear hearing protection when I'm shooting any of my rifles, period. And it's so pleasant. If I take the can off my call it my one of my 300 Win Mags, for example, and it's got a muzzle brake on it, if I'm not wearing hearing protection, I'm like, it is just, you can't even do it. I mean, it's one trigger squeeze and you're screwed. For days you're going to have it ringing in your ear. Paul got perpetual ringing in his ears already from shit like that in the military. So I don't, especially that I get some of the gun law things, but the cans, especially in other countries, like you can go to South Africa, for example, all of Africa, you can walk into any sporting goods store there and go buy a suppressor off the shelf. You yourself can walk in as a tourist and buy one for, I don't know, $100 US kind of thing like that. So that's going to be 180 Rand or 1800 Rand. Excuse me. I did the math wrong, but they encourage it there. And if you go to a country like Africa without a suppressor, without a can on your gun, and you've got a muzzle brake, your PH is going to look over there at you and say, this rotten there's no way he's shooting off my shoulder, because he's right next to you the whole time, right? That's your professional hunter. And he's affected by, and I see PHs, going back like this because they know that cannon's fixing to go off. It's crazy. But going back to the gun stuff. Yeah. Tell us about some more of the kind of I mean, it's can you own a pistol there in your country?
You can own a pistol, but only in association with being in a pistol club. And you can only use the pistol at the pistol club. In fact, the laws are so tight on pistols that if you're caught with, let's say you're driving to your pistol club and you've got your pistol in your lockbox in your car because you're going to the pistol club to use it, and you go, I actually just need to detour a kilometer to the supermarket to get some milk, and then you do that, and the police catch you, and you're not on the most direct route from your house where that pistol is registered to the club, you'll lose the pistol. Gone. Done. Never again. So it's very, very strict, specifically around pistols. There's zero pistol hunting in Australia. It's all rifles.
We have rights enabled by the Constitution of the United States to bear arms, right? That's our constitutional right to do so. So for us, especially, coming from a colonized country, and we kicked the British out, and one of the ways we did, British tried to take our guns, right? So fuck you. So one of the first articles was, the right to bear arms.
I don't know these things because we don't have such a strong gun culture. All I can tell you is that we have very strong rules around guns in Australia. We can get the guns that we need to do the things that we want to do with the guns for the most part. Those people who are gun enthusiasts obviously have a much harder time to go down that pathway. But if you're a hunter and you're hunting big game and you want to get a big game rifle, there's a process. It's not a difficult process. It's not a lengthy process, but there is a process. And we have very, very few gun-related issues in Australia in terms of crime and violence, like almost zero. And that's just the reality.
Where does your violence come from then? because you got to have it.
It's
Yeah,
it's
we have
probably petty
fines.
theft and that.
Domestic abuse, aggravated. Like you might have, like aggravated assault, or again, I'm no expert on the judicial system or the justice system, but we just don't have it. But I understand the tension that exists with this idea, and especially Americans grappling with this idea, because it's not just about the firearm; it's linked to your freedom, and I understand the issue with that slippery slope around freedom. And when a lot of countries, South Africa is a great example. If you spent time there and you speak to South Africans, and then they look at Australia and they think that we are so under the thumb. That's like you have no freedoms and liberties. Your government controls you, and and all of these different things. And yes, we do have some fairly stringent rules and regulations, but our freedom can still operate within that democracy to an extent that it is still freedom. It's not just some people would say, well, that's just like it's an illusion of freedom. It's not. I can take my rifle out. I can go anywhere in the country with it. I can shoot whatever I want. I couldn't do that with a semi-automatic or a fully automatic or an automatic shotgun, but I don't need those things. Or I don't want them. And then you could argue, well, you don't want them, you don't need them because you haven't been raised in a culture that's allowed them. And maybe that's true as well. But it's a difficult tension between freedom and liberty and the right to bear arms, and the damage that they cause when those freedoms and liberties are extended to the extent that they are in America. A really simple question, which is a really difficult question to ask oneself, is what's worth more, my freedoms and my personal liberties and the freedom and personal liberties of my fellow countrymen, or my life and my family's lives and the lives of my fellow countrymen? Which is worth more? And that's obviously a ridiculous question because they're both incredibly important. In fact, you should have both, really.
The counter is going to be to that. Well, don't I have the right to defend my family and my property and my freedom? Right. That's always the counter to that argument.
Correct. Yeah. It is, and it's challenging. Like it's a scale that every country sits on with its gun policies of where you align on that scale. And one is kind of absolute, dominance and control over these things, and one is 100% freedom. And where you sit on that scale obviously is determined by where you live. But it's challenging. There's nowhere in Australia. Well, I mean, no, not nowhere. Very few places in Australia that I wouldn't feel safe. I've never walked through I'm a man too. I'm a white man. I have never walked through an alleyway or a street or a town or a city and ever felt threatened. Ever, the thought has never entered my mind that I should have a gun with me. Never.
I was gonna say, why would you? Nobody has any guns.
Well, exactly. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it. And so, which I know if you speak to a South African, that's a very foreign concept. I have a lot of friends who are South Africans. We have a lot of South Africans that have immigrated from South Africa to Australia and joined our hunting club. And when they're driving and they see a car crash, they're expecting a gunfight. Like that's just what they're thinking. Or when they drive into a certain part of town, they're thinking, "Oh, I should really have a firearm here." And it's just not. That's just not in our culture. That's just not in the cultural zeitgeist. That's not what we think about. And that's not a reality in terms of the gun violence in our country either. So the trick is making sure we have enough freedom and liberty and access to the firearms that we need to do the things that we want to do without it being overly regulated. And I actually think, contrary to what some people might think or might say, I think Australia is in maybe not the sweet spot, but close to the sweet spot where we need to be with firearms.
Well, Paul, I'm going to throw this over to Paul because after 30 years of military service and defending our country, so you've heard what Chris has to say, right? And let's hear
before Paul, can I just apologize to all the Americans that I've offended?
No. Listen, we got big shoulders.
Listen, Chris, don't show your over here for a very long time.
but Paul, Yeah. Well, no, listen, we finally just got rid of probably the worst administration we've ever had. It's certainly the worst administration in my lifetime. We finally voted those quacks out. But we've been going through this for several years, and it's a hotly touted debate. But Paul, I mean, like I said, you're you've got more time in service than anybody. You fought on several continents for the country and for the flag. What is your take on the issue with guns?
Nah, well, we'll start with I'm just one piece of the huge cog. So, and like Chris hit it nail on the head, right? He would probably think, well, what's Chicago? You start thinking United States, you start thinking Chicago, you start thinking the hoods of California, New York. The last thing that probably comes across Chris's mind is Okeechobee or St. Augustine, Florida, or Johnstown, Ohio. So there's that perception of what the United States looks like, and there's the perception of what, Australia looks like. So you're trying to get all that set up.
And that's when Chris's camera
Yeah, you
just
pissed him off. He's leaving.
I see the first question I asked Paul. Chris takes.
I'm fixing it
powder.
now. I heard
Hey,
liberty and flag, and I
takes
just zoned out. Sorry, Paul.
He's
continue.
like, I ain't listening to your dumb. See ya.
Yeah, right.
Please keep going. I'll be back in a second.
No worries. Yeah.
Keep going, Paul. Rant.
No, I mean there's no rant to it, right? It's you talk about the defending of the United States is allowing everyone to have their opinion, right? That's what we do. That's what everyone that does the right thing in the right uniform fights for people to be pro-gun, to be anti-gun, to have civil conversations. And I obviously my side of it, but I have to respect, as much as I may not like, someone's right to not have a gun and to rely on the police that are 45 minutes away to do whatever they think is keeping their family and or themselves safe. It's and so, and then from what I wanted to ask Chris, and I'll wait till he gets back.
Are you going to ask about the kangaroo again?
No.
No, you can't shoot them. Stop asking.
Paul, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what you just said, it sounds like you're in favor of protecting people's right to choose whether or not they want to own and possess a gun.
Well, I mean, like I said, if you served, you were a servant, right?
Right.
And my job is not to make my job now or then was not to make an opinion on what someone else can do. My job is to defend their right to do that. That's really what it boils down to. So
I like that. That was very diplomatic, by the way, Paul. I like it.
No, it's the truth. That's back to the being ethical and integrity. With integrity, there are a few rules. It's hard to be.
Shit, we're going back to integrity again. I thought we were over that.
Chris is back on, so I got.
I'm gonna check this camera real quick.
Apparently, I can't switch my camera while the streams keep going.
Whoa, we had some technical difficulties there, folks. Beauty of technology. I talked to folks in Australia, but it doesn't always work as planned. So we're going to jump back into this episode as close to where we left off as possible. And I promise the next time we get Chris back on the show, we will pick up this gun conversation because I think it's something everybody wants to know about.
20,000 deer on it. The biggest.
And what was the name of that place again?
It's called Water Valley is the area.
Okay.
And it's basically a collection of, I think it's 12 or 13 cattle stations that are linked together and high fenced around it. The biggest heads you will see, maybe not like New Zealand size reds in there, but like huge species in there, huge deer. Every species apart from hog deer is represented in there. And it's geared towards trophy hunters, and it's pretty incredible. So, and there's a bunch of guides that service that. But again, because it's not properly managed, very few people know about it. But it's an absolute gold mine. It's a great place to hunt. If you want that kind of hunt. It's not like a wild, let's climb a mountain for 4 days and maybe catch a glimpse of the bum of some deer. It's not that kind of hunting. But if you're wanting like a representative trophy for any of the species of deer in Australia, apart from hog deer, and I probably wouldn't shoot a sambar in there because they're a bit sad, the sambar in there. They prefer the wild places, but everything else is incredible. Big fellow bucks,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm pretty familiar with all the for not the entirety of the international community, but when you were talking about that place I've never heard of before, and I've heard of everything.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show, the lack. And that's one of the reasons I wanted you on the show too, because it's like the more and more I watched what you were doing, like I had no idea. Like the hand of God, I had no clue that you had hog deer, for example. No, I've been chasing hog deer for years in South Africa. I've still not I've passed on several, but it's different when you're hunting there. We can't bring the meat home with us. So for me to harvest an animal just for the sake of shooting, now certainly we could donate it or do whatever, but it's not the same. I've been chasing one for years, that were brought over and they got out and they're free range now. I didn't know y'all had that shit there. I did know about axis deer and fallow deer, but I thought that was the extent of it. Like that was pretty much it. For, a buffalo, obviously water buffalo, and then the scrub bulls and stuff like that. I knew about that. I had no. I mean, you just listed off 6, 7, 8, 9. Big game species to hunt. I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
Why is wired?
When you think about a juvenile or a young growing community, it's not surprising though that there's, because it takes an individual or a group of individuals to collate the information so that even the community that is growing understands what's available. And that's what's surprising, is that it's not surprising to me that Americans don't know what's on offer in Australia, because there are so many Australian hunters that have no idea what's available, because it's growing before us as we see it, which is why it's so important that we shape it. So it's an exciting place to be. It's a real Wild West, and it's fairly unknown. But that's what's fun about it.
And do you think one of the things, I mean, obviously, when we go hunt these foreign places, accommodation's a big thing to American hunters. Now, I don't want to paint our group with that brush, because we're used to shacking up together in a log cabin somewhere, chasing elk or, chasing whitetail. So for me, the accommodation is a very small portion of the experience. I would rather, enjoy. You're going to be in the bush anyway. You're going to come back to the lodge to sleep and have a warm meal. And other than that, you should be out there hunting, kind of thing. So and when because you made the comment about accommodation, is it just rustic accommodation? Is that what you think? Is it lack of services? Like there's no high speed internet, or there's no cable TV, or what is it when you say lack of accommodation? What did you mean there?
Yeah, it's both. And it varies for different parts of the country, depending on how isolated or how rough the part of the country is. So for the Northern Territory, it's just it's fairly rustic house accommodation. Maybe if you're lucky, it might just be like a shack or like something that's built onto a house, or it might be tenting it. And I'm not saying there's no accommodation. There is, but it's not. I don't think it would be to the standard that someone who's a big game trophy hunter would expect. Further south, a lot of the hunting, there's a few places that you can go to that are more ranch styles that have nice accommodation and that have high-speed internet and things like that, some luxuries. But then there's also, we have a lot of outfitters in the country who you go into the wild places with them. And so you're in a swag or a tent and you're sleeping under the stars, and that's the experience. So we have a whole range of different experiences, but we don't have the top tier. Like if you look at some of the places in New Zealand and you look at the photography around these ranches, apart from the fact that their red deer look like they're mutated, because they are, they're just these marble, glorious mansions. We don't have that yet. I hope one day that we will, but we don't have it yet. You'll find some places in Australia similar to what you'd find in South Africa, some ranches like that. So we have that kind of thing, to varying degrees of nice, clean. Well, they're all nice and clean. I'm making it sound like we're a bunch of homeless people. We're not. We're very civilized here in Australia. We're still under colonial rule.
You're scaring me, Chris. You're scaring me.
But yeah, there are some nice places. Some places that I would personally recommend. Have a Go is a property that's available on Hunting Trips Australia. We were just talking about it. The species they have there Incredible place. Brad and Linda are trophy hunters themselves. They spend every year they go to South Africa. They understand the needs of trophy hunters as well as people who are their first time hunters. They accommodate everyone. It's an incredible property. They have pretty much everything under the sun there that you can hunt, and hunt it whether you want to fly around in a buggy or whether you want to stalk it on foot, whether you want to bow hunt. It's there's 1,000 ways you can approach that place, and they're very accommodating and they're lovely people. So they're one crew that I would definitely recommend that people check out if you want to have a comfortable yet exciting experience. And if you want to shoot a monster too, they have really big red deer there. They're building up their fallow. They have some nice bucks there. Camels, obviously, water buffalo. Donkey. If you want to shoot a donkey. I don't know how they taste compared to zebra, but
I'm a big free range guy. You know, fair chase is one thing, but free range for me, that's, going up in the mountains. Like when we go to South Africa, chasing free range kudu up in the mountains where there's not a road for, 5K, and you're climbing straight up and you're in there for, all day long to hopefully, to target one that's my kind of hunt right there. That's what I enjoy.
Same.
The driving around. Yeah, and I think we've all been there. We've all done the driving around in the truck thing in Africa, and then spotting an animal and then trying to stalk in. But I think there's so much more reward, personal reward, when you actually get out there and do it that way. And then when you have to pack it out, that's for me. It's not for everybody. And some people want, if it's not that 5-star accommodation, they're just like, hell with it, I'm out.
So this is it's an interesting segue, because it speaks to what we're talking about before about production, but also in terms of ways to hunt animals and the free range versus private versus wild and all those different conversations. One of the criticism that we received this year for our season was that we tried to balance a mixture of what we call state forest hunting, where it's completely wild, versus what we would call free range, which is wild animals moving into private properties, but it's still not high fenced, with also one high fenced episode where we're literally in a game reserve. We tried to balance it all. But some people, there's a coalition of hunters in Australia, or a group or a demographic of hunters in Australia, that think that the only type of hunting is public land hunting. I'm sure you have similar groups in America. And I'm a huge fan of it. That's how I cut my teeth. That's my favorite. When I go hunting, that's how I go hunting. I don't really have access to any private property at all. I got one private property 30 minutes from me where I can shoot rabbits. That's it. That's all I've got. So everything that I do outside of the show is always public. And the community, our audience, have said we want to see more public land hunting, because that's the really exciting stuff. That's where there's the highest tension. That's where there's the most on the line. And it's something that I've thought about and struggled with for a long time, because it is the most exciting, it is the most rewarding, but it's also the most difficult to film. And again, going back to what we talked about, if you're investing time, effort, energy, and money into something, you want to be able to get something out of it. And there's no guarantees with public land hunting, which is what makes it so awesome. But for season 3 of our show, which is going to start production mid-2025, that we are solely focused on public land hunting, and we're switching things up and we're changing the rhythm of the show to accommodate for that. So what we're doing is a group of hunters, myself and a bunch of my friends, traveling into the deepest, darkest corners of the Victorian high country, into the alpine, into the wild places, and we're going to find a spot that we've never been before, and we're going to hunt it for a period of time. And the show is going to be day by day figuring out the rhythm of that location. And I don't know if we're going to drop an animal every episode. I don't know what's going to happen. And so it's a huge risk for us to go and do that. And just the resourcing and the infrastructure that's going to have to go into enabling that is just technically, it's a difficult challenge to do. But it's one that we're going to do, and it's something that I'm excited for. And it's funny because over the years, I've learned to plan everything, and that's what makes a great show. And there's only so much you can plan when you're going into the unknown to film. And so we will probably be shifting it up a little bit with the episodes. And focusing a lot more on the people or the individuals, their stories, how they're feeling, their frustrations, the community, the camp life. And so the season will have a different rhythm and pace to it. But I'm still hoping that we harvest a lot of animals. I'm pretty confident that we will. I'm fingers crossed. I hope that we've got some great hunters in coming on as guests. So I'm pretty confident that we will get a lot of animals, hopefully more than one per episode, hopefully. But it's going to be an interesting and unique challenge because I again, if I'm serious about promoting ethical hunting and helping the Australian hunting community form and develop in a positive way, then showing public land hunting at its in its kind of purity is something that's important to do. So yeah, that's interesting.
You certainly speak very passionately about it too. I'll give you that. Like you get all wound up about it the way I do too. I like it. I like to see that passion, that fire in somebody. But that led me to when you were talking about that. How much public land is available in Australia to hunt versus private land? Is it a very small portion? Is it a large portion?
It's probably, I don't know the exact number. It's probably worth putting like a little thing below the screen. But it's, I feel like I don't want to say it off the cuff because I'm going to look like an idiot if I get it wrong. It's hundreds of thousands of acres or hectares. Can I just?
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And put my glasses on. 1 second. This is terrible podcast etiquette. I'm sorry if you're watching this or you're listening.
Maybe you should already had these stats written out.
Yeah, because that's authentic. I am just going to tell you how much we...
Right.
In 2021, we had approximately 17.2 million. In 2024, we were reduced to 3.18 million.
No, what I've recently figured out, Paul, is so Paul Joe Rogan's got a Jamie behind screen, right? That's running the monitors and everything. I need a Jamie. And I've got everything set up for a Jamie now. That's what I need. I need a Jamie in here that we can hey, I could screen share in live. I can do everything else. So I just need a Jamie.
Well, what's Weston doing as part-time?
They're actually still all in the office working right now. The only person that's gone home is Brad.
Ouch.
Okay, so if you're back joining us, because nothing happened and I didn't look up a whole bunch of stats. So 3.14 million hectares of state forest in Victoria, huntable land. It is in New South Wales, it is 2 million hectares. And then in Tasmania, it's 800,000 acres. So they're the states that have public land hunting. So there is a lot of public land.
That's hectares. So you're talking about 6 million hectares that's 12.6 million acres, right? If I did the math correctly.
Speaking to the wrong person.
Paul? Also speaking to the wrong person. Fair enough. So and I'm just curious because a lot of countries, like we spend a lot of time in Africa and especially South Africa. There's very little public land, very little. The vast majority is 90+% is private. What is public have been turned into conservancies.
Well, we still have a lot of public land here too.
We got a ton. That's why I asked, because for hunters here, we can still get out and hunt public land if we choose to do so. And like you said, there's a rift in our community, in the hunting community too. There's the public land guys versus the private land guys. And that's a big debate too. And I don't know for me, it is what it is. The argument, well, you guys can afford to do this and you get the opportunity because you get to raise your deer. Sure. That's true. That's absolutely true. But there's a cost associated with doing that too, just like anything else. So long as you're hunting, I don't give a shit how you do it. But I was just curious to see how that worked over there and how much public land was actually available.
For me, it comes down to I want to experience hunting in every facet that I can. I might go and do duck hunting and then not realize that I don't like duck hunting, but I want to do it so that I know the answer to that. And I do like duck hunting, mind you. But the same things for high fence versus public versus free range. I want to do it all. And and I want to do as much of it as I can. And anyone who says, "Oh, you shouldn't do high fence hunting, or high fence hunting isn't hunting," I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I think if you just did one of those things, you're actually selling yourself short and you're missing out, because public land hunting is amazing, incredibly rewarding. It's a great place to cut your teeth. But then I know a lot of people who have gotten into hunting and gone down the public hunting route because it's kind of this sacred, beautiful thing, romantic thing. And then after 2 years, they stop hunting because it's hard and they don't have what it takes to continue, or they're not getting that reward quickly. And so for someone like that, I would say, hey, go find a private property, go find a property owner, go book a hunt or something, and have an experience that's going to put that fire into you. Go shoot a monster. Maybe not the first time. Like maybe you want your first monster to be a public land one. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But like, there's something. Each of those categories has something of value in them, and to just kind of dismiss them and say, well, public land's a waste of time, or high fence hunting isn't really hunting, you're just robbing yourself of opportunity, I think. I think do it all, and do it all the time.
I think that's a great way to explain it. I don't know. I don't think we've had a guest that's put it that eloquently before, to be perfectly honest.
It's one way or the other,
Right.
Took an Australian to come in and school you guys.
He did say he was civilized. He did say he was
He
civilized.
didn't school me. I don't give a If it floats your boat, man, I'll high five you and say, "Great job, man." If it makes you happy.
Save out. No.
Well,
we have a king, mind you. This is a strange time to be alive. My son.
Right. Yeah, I forgot about that. I was actually in Scotland when the Queen died.
Wow, interesting.
So, yeah, that was a weird time. Shit went sideways there in a hurry. Like,
my parents just came back from where they mint the coins in Australia, and they got the first press of the new coins that had the king's head on them, and they brought them back home and they gave them to my boys. I looked, they're like, this is really special. And I looked at it and I just realized, and I realized it, and my parents realized it at the same time, we've never seen a king's head on our currency in Australia, ever. That's a very strange thing for us to have a king. So not that to reassure Americans, we don't think about the monarchy ever in Australia. We couldn't give a rat's. It's amazing that we know that there's a king, to be honest. But it's an interesting turn of events. People don't come to hear about the colony. They can't talk about hunting. Hear about hunting.
No, I think it's exciting to have a guest on that's something different for us, that's out of our comfort zone, that none of the three of us that are here know a freaking thing about hunting in Australia. Or like, it's been, in doing the research for this episode and kind of following you, I've learned so much about the country. Like, I had no idea any of that stuff existed. Like, not just the camels, but it's all the different species you have, and just all the different. I just, for whatever reason,
it's like Australia all over again.
Yeah, like I want to go bad now. Like, I am definitely going to Australia now for sure.
Yeah,
like, and
if I can like make a point about that, it's incredibly frustrating to be a producer of hunting content in Australia, and very much you release a video and you see it bounce. You feel like it bounces around Australia, but our audience is so small, and yet you see, and it doesn't matter how it feels like. It doesn't matter how good that content is. It's very difficult to break into America and for Americans to see the content. And I'm curious about your perspective in terms of how you experience the content. Did it feel strange and exotic or unusual, or did it feel close to your own hunting shows? Because my fear is that an American would put on the Huntsman and they would watch an episode and they'd be like, oh, that guy has a terrible accent, and geez, that's weird, and that's not real hunting, or that's not American hunting. Like, I don't know how the show is perceived by Americans, but I feel like there's great value there, and to promote Australia and to promote Australian hunting. So I'm curious.
Well, maybe you ought to get your on a plane to come over to FBI or something, check it out.
Maybe I'll do something else devilish. I'll say, if you're listening to this podcast and you're an American and you have an American hunting podcast, feel free to invite me on. I'll go
There you go.
speak to the competition.
Well, I can tell you. So it was totally by chance that we found you. It was actually not me. It was my girlfriend Jenny. I work, so I have a full-time job, and then I come home, and if I'm not working, I edit till normally about 2:00 in the morning. However, is occasionally I have to sit down with her and have some us time and kind of turn all that shit off. So I think I'm cooking dinner, doing something, and she's firing up the TV. She's like, "Hey, what do you want to watch?" I'm like, "You know what? Let's try to find some fallow deer hunting or something." It actually was fallow deer, and she found you from a YouTube search of fallow deer hunts. We're going to watch a couple fallow deer hunts. And we watched the first one with your buddy there. That was the reel that I showed at the beginning, the intro to that, and that was my first experience with you. And then, but it never, your show does not come up in. It will come up in search if you search for it, but it's not going to suggest your show, even though I've watched a ton of fallow deer hunts and a ton of stag hunts. It'll show New Zealand, absolutely. Nothing comes up from Australia unless you specifically ask for Australia. So it's an algorithm thing. And I think it's also a user base too. So once you start getting those users and those the subscribers in the States, the algorithm is then going to start suggesting you out there. To your second point about, is it different? Is it unique? To me, it's unique, but not different, because we kind of focus on the international side of hunting. So it's not totally different than what I would expect out of another country. It's just that I'd never thought about Australia that way. So it was eye-opening to me to say, oh shit, I didn't think you could do that in Australia. I'm a Crocodile Dundee guy as a kid watching that kind of shit. And, a couple other, I think Quigley Down Under and some that's what we're exposed to as kids here. So that was my thought process. Yeah, everybody knows Sydney and the Opera House, but for whatever reason, you don't associate Australia with hunting. Yeah. So it was really cool find. And now that I know these things and listen, we're definitely going to have you on the podcast again, because we went we didn't, this wasn't even close to following the talking points today. We started at number 1 and jumped to Z and then back to 134. And we went all around all kind of shit, but I think it's awesome. I love it. I love finding out about these new places. I love meeting people, and I'll guarantee you that me personally, I'm coming to Australia to hunt. Cause I like that. I want to go to different places. I want to meet new people. I want to experience cultures, and that's the best way to do it. And for us as a show, what we've done is we've made a conscious effort not to get drugged down that whitetail hole, that mule deer hole, because it's such a saturated market. And yes, we still do it and we still love doing it. My passion lies in international hunting and new cultures and new things and things outside the norm here. And the more of that I can bring to other people through our show or through our socials or whatever, the more people that are going to get to go enjoy it and meet people like you and see your shows. And so by proxy, we're, the hope is that we can make a difference and start encouraging people. And we've got a new government coming in too. So that's also great for hunting for us, because now people aren't worried about money all of a sudden. That's been a huge thing for the last several years. And where's the economy going? And interest rates are high and inflation. I think people are finally breathing with a sigh of relief. Like, hey, I can tell you that all of the outfitters that I know in South Africa are licking their freaking chops right now. But they're anticipating it being bigger than the first year back from COVID and the lockdowns.
Yeah, wow.
Like all of a sudden, and their bookings are going crazy, and I think it's going to be a good thing. But
do you have those messenger groups where they send pictures of all the big animals, and it's like, who wants to shoot this?
Yes. So do you use WhatsApp there?
I have WhatsApp, but I don't trust it.
Yeah, so we use WhatsApp all over. Friends in Canada, friends down in Mexico, down in Guatemala. We fish Guatemala quite a bit, and so everybody uses WhatsApp now. That's just the thing. And so we're part of all these different WhatsApp groups, and it's constantly, hey, look at this kudu, or look at this Cape buffalo, or look, and it's really cool to be kind of ingrained in that. But it's also a pain in because especially with the time difference, by the time I go to bed at night, they're all up already. And then my phone just starts going crazy with all these pictures and text and so I got to mute that night. But yeah, Paul, listen, this thing has already gone way over what I thought it would. Do you have anything else? Because we're definitely going to have Chris on again, because I think we just barely scratched the surface of where we can go now.
Right. Well, I was just going to kind of follow up on what you were asking, and you well know that we have such a tight whitetail, pure whitetail. They hunt nothing but whitetail, the American market. So, those guys don't care who hunts anything. So, you got to try to come over the United States. Unfortunately, you eliminate probably half our hunting population right there, because they'll never leave their state if they're county to hunt. Then the other part, and Sean talks about this a lot, and I do love your shows because you're not always successful. You show the realities of it. That's not an easy hunt, and there's certain shows out there that they never miss. First shot, first kill, whether, and it's always the biggest, baddest thing you've ever seen in your life. So there's that market that'll be tough to break into, So I'd probably say, if we eliminate 50%, you got 50% that understand that you will fail. You can't always go after the big one. So yeah, if you can keep doing what you're doing, I think it's a great content, and we'll just work it. We on our side, we'll try to do what we can to get that piece exposed to those hunters out there that want to experience it. So.
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think that's been a reason we've been able to grow so much in a short period of time. Is there is a big segment of the population that, while yes, they still hunt whitetail, they're still passionate for other things in their life outside of whitetail, right? But like I said, it's a very segmented market, but it's still a huge portion of the market too. There's people that want to go, that want to experience life, that want to do things, and I get it. Listen, when I'm trying to talk somebody into coming to, say, Africa with us, and I explain to them, listen, it's safe and it's inexpensive, and you can afford this, and it's not beyond reach, and it takes me forever. And when they go, they finally agree to go, and they're like, all right, I booked my ticket. We're going with you. It's going to be my one and only time. It's my coup de grace trip. I'm never going back. I've never had a single person that only went once, ever. Everybody always goes back. And I feel like as soon as I go to Australia, I've just opened Pandora's box again, because here's yet another country that there's just so
it's
much
a lot
cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. Look, it sounds like we have similar values, similar shared values, and we probably have similar reasons why we've grown. I just have a zest for life, and I have a thirst for knowledge, and I just want to learn, and I want to have new experiences. I'm more than happy to admit that I don't know everything and that I know very, very little, and I'm happy for people to see that on camera. I'm happy for people to see my failures, because the growth is worth more to me than people's opinions, or even my own self-doubt. I honestly think growing is one of the most important things in the world. And if you limit yourself to just one thing, and that's it, that's your only experience of life or hunting, whatever it is, it applies obviously globally, like more than just hunting. But if that's it, you're selling yourself short of so many amazing experiences, so much learning, so much growth, so many people. And that's not to say that, like, there is value in investing and pushing into something and becoming a master at it. We have those hunters in Australia who are just red deer hunters, just chital hunters, just sambar hunters, and they're amazing, and they're pillars in our community. But there's something to be said about being open-minded and experiencing new things. And I think that's where the growth opportunity is, not just in a personal sense, but also if you have a platform, if you have a brand, if you have a podcast, a YouTube channel, a TikTok account where you shoot arrows in your bikini, whatever it is. If you're open-minded.
I want to come to Australia and go do some gold digging.
We have that too.
Well, our last guest, he asked me that question. We had Dylan on, and so we focus a lot in Africa because we go every single year, and we just filmed an entire series based around Africa. And he asked, what's next for you guys? And I said, we're planning on going to Argentina, and I said we're planning on going to New Zealand, and my hope was that I can ignite the passion that I have within myself for the continent of Africa and those other places. Well, just from not a short podcast, but a 3-hour podcast now, that list went from Argentina and New Zealand to Argentina and Australia, and probably Australia first, and then, one of those other places, because it just, you talk about it with so much passion, and I could see it in your episodes and everything else. And the more we talk, the more, oh, shit, you really have that there. Yeah, we can really do that there. And it's just, you've got a ton of unique opportunity. One of the things that are really good for international hunters, you speak the language, there's no language barrier, they understand it. The conversion rate is very easy to figure out. If, like you said, if the gun thing's easy to bring, firearms in and out of the country. See, I went firearms and not guns there. If the firearm from a hunting perspective is there, then, I mean, you're checking all the boxes, right? The other, like when you talk about accommodation, so I feel like most hunters, especially international hunters, so long as they know what to expect before they get there, right? And they're not, sold a bag of a pack of potatoes or whatever the saying is, they're fine with it, right? Yeah. It's when they're shown pictures of shit and they get there and it's not what it was, put out there to be. It's not as advertised. That's what pisses people off. But like Paul and I and Paul and Mike and another my cousin, we went on a trip to Montana a year ago elk hunting, and we rode horseback for miles and miles and miles a day way up in the mountains, and we're away from everybody, and there was no accommodation, there was no, and you know what, we loved it. We didn't, not one of us shot an elk, and Staffen hates a fucking horse now forever. I think he'll shoot the next one he sees.
But we shoot zebras.
But it was a great experience for us, and it was outside of our comfort zone, and we all did it, and we all, even though we were not successful, we loved it. Like it was a great experience, and I'm glad we did it.
I was about 10 minutes away from seeing what a horse tastes like, put it that way.
That's great to close out on, Staffen. So yeah, we've talked about what's next. Oh, what else do we have here? I just want to make sure we didn't miss. I mean, we missed a lot. Like I was just.
Yeah, I got one. What got you into the hunting, showing the cooking side?
Oh, that's a great question.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, the guy has to eat, Paul.
Well, I just like most hunters. I mean, Sean's been talking about doing it forever, and he's yet to do it. So.
He's done it. He just hasn't showed none of the footage yet.
Okay, fair enough.
So, because I'm being very conscious about growing the Australian hunting community and being a part of that process. The content is essentially the delivery mechanism for all of those values. And I've been keeping my eye on America and the hunting culture that you have, that it is so successful, the conservation elements to it, but also the food elements. And specifically in content, it's a bit of a cliche, but what Steve has done with Meat Eater and the way that he was able to correlate hunting and connect it with, not connected, it was always connected, but to show people that it's connected. And it's really helped him deliver that content to a wider audience. And so I've been very mindful of that in the show to make sure that we're doing something similar. That, I mean, for me, that was my introduction to hunting was through food. So it's important to me at just a purely personal level. But I think it's a really important delivery mechanism for the culture shifting content that I want to make. And I think it makes it far more palatable for people who aren't into hunting. It's a great kind of avenue to get into it. And I was discussing this with one of our sponsors the other day, who they sell wild game meat cooking appliances and rubs and spices and all that kind of thing. And we were talking about it, and because he's very passionate about it, as am I. And I said to him, look, we take a massive hit in our analytics because of that choice, for that decision to show wild game cooking. I can show you the graph of our YouTube analytics and our retention and our eyeballs, and it goes like straight peaks on the kill shot, literally on the kill shot. It goes bonk because people rewind and they play it again, and they rewind and they play it again because they're saddest. And then it continues, and then it hits our cooking segment, and it goes. And I being, a study of content, being a study of social media, and I know that's terrible for the videos, is to have people's attention and then to lose it before the end of the video, because that signals to YouTube your video is not good. People don't like it. And so it limits its exposure. But I think it's more important to have that in the content and take the hit, because what we're trying to do is far greater than getting likes, getting clicks, getting views, getting subscribers. That stuff means nothing. I do not care. I can't tell you how many subscribers we have. I don't care. And I never will. And I have no target or goal to get to. All I care about is the shift in our culture, is the hunting community becoming better, more optimistic, more positive, and for me to continue to be true to myself. And so I have to include it. Otherwise, I'm being dishonest. But also, it sounds like I have to. It sounds like it's like a ball and chain, because it's not a ball and chain. It's actually liberating when you understand that connection between the animal and you and the circle, and being involved in that process as a predator in the environment, not just something that kills, but something that consumes. That's liberating. That's incredibly powerful. When I look at a deer, I get excited. I don't just think about the head on my wall. I think about the food I'm going to make. And I'll be the first to say that I'm still very much learning about wild game cooking. And I have some incredible people around me who are so much better at it. And I'm learning from them and involving them because I want to learn and grow. And I don't have to be the be all and end all in every single category. I don't have to be the best marksman. I don't have to be the best cook. I don't have to be the most knowledgeable. I just be me and do what I can and bring along people that I can learn from and other people can learn from. And so that's a long-winded way of saying why I think wild game cooking is an important part. If you want to sell it to other people who are non-hunters, that's the best way to sell it. I think it's the most ethical way to sell it. It's definitely the best way to sell it to the government too.
Right. And like we talked about several times, there is that, well, like you mentioned, the connection back to the community and the tribes and that stuff. And we've had several conversations about people don't understand where beef comes from. Right? Suddenly it just appears on their plate where, my family.
It comes from the grocery store, Paul. Everybody.
Balls from the heavens.
And like Sean talked about earlier, my 3-year-old at that time, we showed her, that what taco meat comes from the deer and how it's harvested, and to make that, that overall connection, as far as how we, like it is said, the circle, the whole big scheme of things, and it doesn't just magically appear, and and enjoying the flavors of it and everything. So yeah.
Well, so this is something that I was thinking about the other day, Paul, that it's not a thought process that I'd heard anyone else talk about in the content that I've watched. And it's not a realization that I'd had. So it was a bit of a revelation, and it helps kind of make the trophy element of hunting a little bit more palatable for those people that get icky about saying, I like shooting just because it's shooting. And I don't have any issues with that. That's not my angle, but it's some people's angle, and I respect them for it. But the revelation essentially is that people have lost connection or lost sight of the fact that they are a predator in the environment. You are a predator. If you're a human being, you're a predator, whether you like it or not. And I don't mean like a sexual predator. I mean like literally someone who engages with the environment by taking meat out of it. And you're either...
Or vegetables.
Or vegetables, correct. And you're either a weak-willed predator that relies on a system to deliver your food this sounds terrible. This is not an ad for people to get into hunting. If you're hearing this, tune out. If you're like a bird who's getting regurgitated the mess into its mouth, or you're the cougar.
This is definitely not making the next reel, I can tell you that.
Or you're the cougar who goes out and gets its claws on it and then feeds its family. Like, which do you want to be?
Or the other end comes out the other end.
Exactly. Like, what do you want to be? Like, you're a predator regardless. And that's not to be some sort of macho kind of like, you want to be the cougar. It's that you're engaging with that system regardless. The blood is on your hands regardless. Whether you choose to actively engage yourself and for you to bear the social responsibility and the cost, or whether you pass that on to someone, that's your choice. And people just don't think of that. People don't realize that. And it's a sad reality, because the truth is that they're still engaging with that system. The fallacy still exists. And going back to what we were talking about before in terms of education and the opportunity to learn, the learning opportunity is lost. it's like you're a carnivore that's never learned how to use its claws, but over millions of years, evolution has built these claws for you to use. And if you use those claws, something deep within your genes and your genetics and your DNA, you get endorphins because it's like, because evolution's rewarding you for doing the thing that you're supposed to do. It's like when you don't engage with that, why have claws? Like, why be a human if you're not going to be a human? Be a human. And I think this weird kind of where humankind is going at the moment is very, very, and we can, artificial intelligence, all this different stuff that's deeply fascinating and interesting. It's very bizarre, and it's not necessarily even, I'm going to say, wrong. It's just very, very different from the system that is developed humankind, the natural system, I mean, or you could argue the divine system, whatever you want. For so long, it's just weird. So the reality is that you're a predator, whether you like it or not. Even if you're a vegan, you're still a predator.
Exactly.
So just lean into it and learn what's amazing about being a predator. Don't fear it.
I like it. We may be able to make a reel out of that yet. That was a good recovery.
He turned it around.
I'll have to cut Staffan's butthole joke out there, though. That was in poor taste for sure. But
come on, man.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Chris, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. We appreciate it. You've given us and our listeners a fantastic look at the unique hunting aspects in Australia and the importance of ethical practices. So for anyone out there wanting to learn more, check out the Huntsman on YouTube. I will link it in the description, and visit Chris's website at thehuntsman.com.au. Also, if you're considering a hunting trip to Australia, don't forget to explore Hunting Trips Australia and the Australian Hunters Club. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Chris, for joining us today. And I was going to say we hope to meet you in Australia someday, but I feel like we're definitely going to meet you in Australia probably sooner rather than later after this podcast. So thanks so much for coming on, sir.
Thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it.